Here we are streaming now. Here we are doing streams. What a sleepy day I've had. Finally. Finally I got a good night's sleep last night, you guys. And with good night's sleeps comes sleepy days. And my little pug even, my little Milo, my little guy, he's caught the vibe. We're all just like completely zenned out today, man. Zenned out is exactly the word. Right? Went out to the little back patio area, or not patio area, but the little back green space that's back here. Let him tool around a little bit. I did some meditation, right? And I've literally just like, today was a day off. It was a day of just contemplation, relaxation, and I'm so grateful that I actually got it. This week was a weird one. My mom asked me, "Hey, how's your week going?" She sent me a little text, and I just sat down and I thought, like, yeah, this week was oddly tumultuous for me. Like, it was oddly because I try to make my life simple. I'm trying very hard to live. It's sort of funny to say that I'm trying very hard to live a simple life. Thanks, Major. Hope you're doing well out there, bud. But it is how I feel about it. Like, I'm something of a minimalist. I don't believe in having lots of stuff. I'm trying really hard to ensure that I take time for myself. You know, and people interpret that to be like, oh, John, you're an introvert. And I suppose that I am, but I think that it's very important for people to take time for themselves. How you doing, Rusty? I thought yesterday was Thursday. Dude, I've had those days for sure. I had one of those just last week. I was working a Sunday, uh, uh, and it was actually good. I was working a Sunday, and I thought it was Saturday. So I was like, okay, I got another one of these. And then somebody points out it is Sunday. I was like, oh, so it actually worked in my benefit? It's good when it works in your benefit. It's really bad when you're like walking around on a Thursday, like working your normal 9 to 5 sort of job, being like, oh, thank God it's Friday, thank God it's Friday. And then somebody's like, dude, it's Thursday. And you're like, how could this happen to me? You got like another one of these, right? And then you call in sick. Yeah. So it's Cyberpunk is fucking up my sleep. Yeah, you're like the fourth person to tell me about this show, Cyberpunk. I think I should actually do it. I think I should watch it, and uh, uh, because I'm all about like I recently rewatched Arcane. If you haven't seen Arcane, which is literally like a League of Legends, it's based on the video game League of Legends. I rewatched it again, and I didn't like sit down and like watch it. I like had it on. It's brilliant. Like it's actually brilliant storytelling on a Shakespearean level of like it's it's about a it's set in a world where there's an upper class and an underclass. There's an undercity and an upper city. It's about the geopolitics of both the upper city and the undercity and how they relate with one another. That dives into the nature of humanity, the dangers of technology, the while also sprinkling through like the respect one has for one's rivals, uh, the how love can be one's greatest downfall. It's absolutely it's Shakespearean in its storytelling. It really respects the characters. I think that's something that modern storytellers, especially Westerners, really don't do very often. There is such a thing as a throwaway character in Western storytelling, and they've become more and more common in Western storytelling. That even protagonists are considered throwaway characters in lots of Western stories. And a show like Arcane is like, no, there's no such thing as a small character, right? Anime does this a lot. Where they'll introduce a small character, and then all of a sudden you have an entire episode about that character's backstory, and you didn't expect it. And suddenly this character, who may very well be just like a person that's on the side, that doesn't have a lot of lines most of the time, but all of a sudden you like know stuff about this character, and they're not just a throwaway character. And then when they do things, that you can have a situation where they'll do something, and it connects to this episode that they did about it, and it makes it make a type of sense that it might not have made sense previously. And so I really, really value Arcane for that. And it's one of the stronger stories I've seen in the last 5 years, for sure. Definitely worth a watch if you've never seen it. Oh, the game, even worse content, even worse. Cyberpunk 2099 or something like that. I don't remember the date. I own that game as well. Got it on PC at a deep discount. Very nice. Play it with mods that make the game actually good. It's hard to put down. I felt like Cyberpunk got a real bad rap when it came out. I feel like people really shit on that game, and I thought that it was a great game. Like, what did it like revolutionize me down to my core? No, right? Jack, good to see you, bud. Arcane is my girlfriend's favorite show. You've got a good girlfriend. That's a keeper. That's a keeper right there, Jack Reed. If you've never seen Arcane, you got to do yourself a favor, bud. Especially if your girlfriend likes that show. You gotta push those chips in right now, bud. Because you got a girlfriend with some goddamn good taste, right? This isn't weeb shit. This isn't just somebody being a little weirdo weebo, okay? Like, Arcane is as good as any Shakespearean play that has ever been written. I genuinely believe that. It's an extremely strong show. She's great, but an anarchist. Yeah, nobody's perfect, bud. She's on the right side. Okay? That's that good enough. Good enough. And and disagreements like this can add spice to relationships, right? It can add spice to relationships. So, nobody's perfect. Good stuff, Jack. Good to hear it. Yeah, Cyberpunk. If I were to install Cyberpunk again, and I might, like I thought it was a good game in the first place. I thought that they really executed on a lot of stuff. And I don't know, people always do this to video games like this, like big world building video games or these sorts of things. They're always they always set the expectations way too high, right? And the expectations will never be met, because what people actually want is essentially like a full encompassing immersive experience. Like people want it to be a dream. That's what they want it to be. That what we are engaging in, and let's be honest. Like I'm honest about video games. These are digital hallucinations, right? That it's very much like a DMT trip or a mushroom trip or an LSD trip, right? It's just digitally done. And you want to have a quote unquote fully immersive experience, right? Because when you're on LSD. There isn't a moment where the LSD stops and you got to like do something or it breaks the trip. Like when you're on the trip, you're on the fucking trip, right? And that is what people are looking for. And they're not honest about it. Bread Bunny, good to see you. Good to see you. I don't know if I've seen you here in a while, Bread Bunny. Good to see you. And I think that once you're honest about that with yourself, that really what you're looking for is like an LSD, like DMT kind of experience, and that's what these video games are delivering to some degree. Once you are honest about that, then you can be more honest that they're not going to deliver that. Like that's not what's going to happen, right? And then once you understand that, then the experience can be quite enjoyable. And I felt Cyberpunk was a very enjoyable game from the outset. If I were to install it and play it again, though, I would mod the hell out of it. I would mod the absolute crap out of Cyberpunk, because it's where my disappointment came from in the game is that it didn't deliver enough on the future vision, on the futuristic vision of what Cyberpunk sort of promises. That I felt like the fashion and a lot of the stuff that's around seems fairly basic. The good thing is that 1.7 is going to fix several systems, redo the police from the ground up, put in actual car chases. Yeah, you're essentially talking about the stuff I never cared about. So, I guess. Like, I guess if what you want is more like chase sequences, more that kind of stuff. And yeah, I heard about people who, like, there are mods that put in, like, transit systems, so you can just transit system around the whole time. Like, people really want Cyberpunk to be a place that you live, right? Like, Skyrim was like this. And I guess that's why I'm so used to it. Like, people don't want to play a game. People want to live there. They want to spend a life in these games. Like, that's what this whole immersive experience is about. And that's why I compare it to, like, a DMT trip or an LSD trip, right? You want to... It's like you want to be born there, live a life, and die, and then carry this life that you lived in this world that is separate from the world that we have. It's like that episode. There's an episode of Adventure Time that's like this, where Finn goes into, like, a pillow universe, right? And he's in the pillow universe where everything around him is pillows, and he lives a whole life there, right? And dies there as an old man, right? And then he comes out the other side and he, like, pops up from the pillow fort, which was the gateway into the pillow world. And he goes, "Oh man, what a crazy dream I had." And then something interrupts him. And then Jake goes, "Hey, what was about that dream you had?" And Finn goes, "Oh, I don't remember." But really? And he just doesn't remember, right? Yeah, yes, exactly. Like the game Roy from Rick and Morty. Yes, that's exactly it. That, like, people want video games to be like it's a life. You're gonna live a life, and they want the whole life experience. And so, with a game like Cyberpunk, I think it didn't deliver in the life aspect of it. That there were things that were missing that would be there, right? If this was a real life simulator, like. But if you approach a game like Cyberpunk and you're just like, this is a game, I'm just going to shoot guys, follow a story arc, play the main mission, you know, see what this game has to say about, like, the nature of existence. Is this valuable art, right? I think Cyberpunk delivers in a lot of ways. I think it's a good game. And I think that the modding community is going to make it better and better over time. This is one of those games that I think in, like, 10 years... just the way Skyrim did, right? It's still going to be around, and people will be like, "Oh, you just got to download the Xavier X-Pac mod, and it really kicks it up into the next level," right? And that's probably going to be true. So, it's our seemingly only chance to escape the capitalist hellscape. Well, Cyberpunk is funny in that way, because it's not an escape from the capitalist hellscape. If anything, it's like it's a diving deeper into the capitalist hellscape. It's just what's interesting about a game like Cyberpunk, and what I think is interesting about a lot of post-apocalyptic future sort of videos and movies and stuff, is that we really would rather prefer as people to live in a world where we're, like, killing people and killing zombies and killing monsters and, like, grinding our existence into this permanent battle against the forces of hell or whatever, than, like, go work an office job, right? We would rather live in a place of perpetual warfare fighting against a constant, persistent evil than live in a world where, sure, it's peaceful, but you gotta waste all your time shuffling paper, right? And it's interesting that, like, where are the video games where we're, like, you know, living with angels and shit? Where are the video games where we're, like, because the hard reality is that if we were actually at peace, right? If we were actually at peace, well, you don't need a video game to do that. You can walk outside and sit in the grass and close your eyes and be at peace. You can go do that, right? And there's no simulation for that, right? There's no way to create a video game. And if you did create a video game, it would very much just be like, great, go outside and sit in the grass, close your eyes, and be at peace, right? And yeah, zombies are a metaphor for protesters. Just saying. When zombies first showed up in our culture, they were very explicitly a metaphor for consumers, for consumerism. That Dawn of the Dead and the original zombie movies, like, and the director was very upfront about it. Like, I'm not interpreting anything. Like, this is his this is what he said, and that's why the original zombie movies were set in malls. Right? And he was just like, zombies are a metaphor for consumer culture and for consumerism, right? And maybe zombies have shifted in that way. They've become like a metaphor for protesters. I think you could make an argument for that. But, like, I just think it's very interesting that, like, lots of our video games are really, the role that you play is... And the most quote-unquote peaceful ones essentially regress us. Like things like Stardew Valley, right? Games where you're just like building a tiny little farm or something, right? Like it's interesting how to see what's popular in the culture. And yeah, anyway. I could talk about video games all day long. I feel like today is going to be very like culture-y and very... I do have some articles and some links and stuff, but I don't know, guys. I'm feeling very zen today. I'm feeling kind of... I don't necessarily want to fight the good fight. You know what I mean? I just kind of want to shoot the shit. Holy shit, so apparently mega commies are just getting torn the fuck down on Truth Social by MAGA people. Yeah, that's not surprising. Like, the whole MAGA commie movement, right? Like, I won't be too surprised to find out that it is a CIA psyop to attempt to co-opt communism as an idea and infuse it within the fascist Nazi organizations in order to discredit or defang communism as a movement throughout the United States, right? That the United States is, the United States is rife for a real communist movement, right? Like, the populace is steadily shifting to the left, right? The populace is steadily shifting to the left, and people are becoming more and more aware of ideas like Marxism, right? People are beginning to take more seriously. It's no longer a cultural death knell to say that you're a socialist or a communist, right? You can do so without people actively trying to hurt you, right? Like, you're not going to lose your job if you say that you're a socialist or a communist anymore, right? Like, Richard Wolff points out constantly that, like, he got a PhD in economics without reading Marx. They, like, literally didn't tell him to read Marx. That's how dedicated these people are to dismantling and destroying the idea of communism. And if you're the CIA, right, which one of the CIA's primary objectives for existing in the first place is the eradication of communism, right? That's a big reason Truman creates it. Like, the CIA is instrumental. Like, the whole staunch the spread of communism, right? Like, that's the casus belli for why they did the Vietnam War and Laos and Cambodia, right? That and that through that period of time, the reason why Nixon goes to China and has conversations with people in China is because he doesn't want that conflict to escalate into nuclear war, right? So, like, so there's an anti-communist society that has been built, and now, because of the overt, abject, total betrayals and failures of capitalism, well, socialism and communism are beginning to catch on again, and people are beginning to ask themselves, like, wait a minute, like, Is there anybody around who like here's a funny one that's been floating around the internet for a little bit. Where is it? Yeah, this is Larry Summers. Larry Summers was like high level Democrat economist. I think he was like this. I forget what his position is, but he's like an economic advisor to the Obama administration, to the Clinton administration, right? There is some social phenomenon which I suspect explains non-work, non-marriage, deaths of despair, general alienation, and I suspect the rise of reactionary populism. It should be a major task of social science to understand it. Yeah, Larry. Yeah, right? It's called Marxism, right? Like, these guys are beginning to recognize that something's going wrong in their societies, right? But they're failing to recognize that there is an entire study of this. People have been studying it for 100 years, right? Like, we know. We've been working on it. But it's stuff like this that sort of reveals to you that some of these guys are not malicious. They're just clueless. They don't actually understand that, like, communism is an effort to describe in plain language why these things are happening. And so it makes sense to me that while a communist movement and a socialist movement is just beginning to find its feet and find its legs, and you're just starting to see young people, like people who are between the ages of 30 and 40, begin to actually go like, okay, wait a minute, let's read this communist stuff. Let's actually look at this communist stuff, right? And they're beginning to say, oh, fuck, yeah, this is it. Like this, there's some really accurate shit in here that it makes sense to me that the organization that's designed to destroy that very thing would want to co-opt it and want to say, okay, let's see if we can push this energy away from where it's really dangerous, which is the black communities. Like, let's be straight, right? The CIA wants to make sure that there can never be another Martin Luther King. They want to make sure that there's not going to be another Malcolm X. That's what they really are doing, right? They want to make sure that the black community is subjugated and enslaved. That's the whole goal. And so let's see if we can poison the well here and make it so that communism is something that the black community connects with MAGA. So if we can create MAGA communists and create a MAGA communist movement, right, then we can poison the well for other communists. So that if we can make the populace, if someone like, let's say myself, stands up and says, I'm a communist, then people will think red hat Donald Trump supporter. That I think is what they're trying to do, and I won't be surprised at all if that turns out to be the case, because it doesn't make sense, and it makes sense that that MAGA people would absolutely go after it just based on communism. Communism's the most evil thing. It killed 100 million people, and now you're telling blah, blah. Just the base propaganda shit alone is going to create dissension in the ranks there. So I'm not surprised to see mega commies getting torn apart by their own people, because it's incoherent on the face of it. Like, anybody who just takes the time to read fascist literature and then compare it to the Communist Manifesto and the works of Karl Marx, just do a compare and contrast. It wouldn't be difficult. It would require doing things like reading, which I know all these MAGA people, we know how much they love to read, right? But if you just did a read of it and then did a read of the other one and then just ask yourself, are these two systems compatible? Well, the answer is going to be no, right? It's pretty obvious. If you take a glass of water and then put a match in it, right? Are you going to call yourself a fire water? Right? Or whatever. The two are incompatible. They don't work together by definition. Demolition Man did that. The movie starts as a peaceful society that has its shit together, but then the movie goes on to prove that peace is cynical and covertly evil, and a peaceful society is sissy and needs to be destroyed. Well, and I do think that what Demolition Man was really pointing out was that what their society wasn't a peaceful society, that it was just a different form of fascism, right? That the people living in it were so deprived of their own humanity. It was so cleansed of what it is to be a human being. And everyone living in it was sort of a pretend version of a person. That the society refused, like everything was just like perfectly clean and perfectly white and sterile. Sterile is the word that I would use to describe the city, the civilization that existed in Demolition Man. This sterilization of the culture, where any expression is considered immoral or wrong, that sex itself becomes considered a dirty act, that people can't actually even physically touch or engage with one another. It's a sterile society, and one that I think is disgraceful. I would never, ever, ever, ever tolerate a society like that. And there is like a sterilization of our own culture that you can see, right? And moreover, I wouldn't describe the society in Demolition Man as peaceful, right? It's not a peaceful society. That the society that you see in Demolition Man is actually extremely hyper oppressive and repressive. That it has a veneer of peacefulness. Yeah, puritanical is a good way of saying it, radio. Yeah, absolutely. Good to see you too. But peaceful, I wouldn't describe it as peaceful, right? I would describe it as just like if you take a boot and stand on someone's back dressed in a beautiful suit, and then just ignore that you're standing on someone's back, you can declare that peaceful if you like. And that's essentially what Demolition Man, I think, was talking about. And in many ways warning about. Because our society is extremely repressive as well. Like, I think one of the most disgusting things that I'm seeing happening right now is that you're seeing these AI image generators being created. People are creating AIs that can generate art, right? Good to see you, Anemone. I don't think I said hi to you, Ligandes or Oliver. Good to see you guys. So we're creating these AI art generators, right? Well, go and find any of these AI art generators and just type in topless woman, right? Haha, John, no ho pervert. Haha, yeah, okay, great. Right? What's going to happen? It's going to be censored, right? I think that's disgraceful. I think that's completely disgraceful. The human body and the human form is not disgusting. It is not to be censored. It is not to be shunted away into corners. It's not to be sterilized and cleansed, right? And to think so or to say so is to engage in a dehumanization of the society and the culture. That the human form is the base form of expression. And just because you think it's quote unquote dirty or you think it's perverse says more about you than it does about anybody else. That the human form, right? At base, our base humanity relies on sex and sexuality. And the idea that it is to be considered dirty or dingy, and that we are creating systems of art creation that are, by their design, programmed to say to humanity, oh, this is dirty and dingy. I consider that disgusting. I think that's disgraceful, and that we are building systems to accept our own subjugation, our own artistic subjugation, and to reflect upon ourselves this idea that our very form and our very body that we find ourselves in are to be censored and considered unacceptable. I think that that's disgusting. I think that's fascist. I think that's high level oppressive fascist bullshit. And you're going to create a system of art creation that systemically does that to us. So it's not even like you doing it, right? That it's an artistic creative system. No, I think that kind of if that kind of thing became ubiquitous, I think that we should tear it down. Physically tear it down. Like, I think that we should find the code and delete it. Fuck your puritanical nonsense. Like, I'm sorry that you are uncomfortable seeing a pair of boobs. I'm sorry that my penis disgusts you. Like, sorry that you haven't grown up enough to be able to handle seeing nude people. So sorry that you're still a little boy or a little girl. Like, sorry you haven't grown up. The rest of us, who live in the world and who are adults, right? We're not going to tolerate that kind of thing. We're not disgusting. We're human beings. Ugh. Bingo, I suspect psyops too. I've always thought I think you mean fakers, like Vosh and Haas are funded by the government, or talkers. I feel like guys like Vosh and Haas are just kind of inevitable, Like, they're not... I don't actually even consider them very interesting. Like, that's the thing that's interesting. Like, a guy like Vosh is essentially just an inevitability. He, gets in the door right away. Basically, YouTube starts, he gets in the door from the ground floor, right? And so a guy like him is just inevitable. But I don't think he's interesting. And it's odd that he sort of still persists in the conversation because he's so boring, right? His takes are basically just imperialism is good, that banal sort of liberal talking points are to be considered radical, right? Like, he's not a revolutionary. He doesn't really have anything interesting to say. I've literally never heard the guy say anything that was worth listening to. It's like listening to a pot of pasta boil. Like, who gives a shit whatsoever? And that's sort of my large critique about Vosh is he's just a liberal imperialist who, I guess if you're a liberal imperialist too, might be interesting. And I guess he shows us that there are a lot of liberal imperialists that want to have their liberal imperialist bias confirmed, but it's just it's not very interesting. And when he gets into these debates with people, he just sounds like a baby. He doesn't, and he doesn't debate very well. That's the other thing I always find very surprising, that he's supposed to be this great big quote unquote debate bro, but he always ends up just sort of defaulting to childish insults. He sounds like a little kid, right? Like, he sounds kind of like a 6-year-old who doesn't actually have adult positions, right? And if you confront him with adult positions, he just can't handle it. He just moves on, right? So you can never actually dwell with him in a place. That's what I think is so frustrating about a guy like Vosh, right? Like, at least someone like Joe Rogan, right? You think about Joe Rogan. At least if you get into interesting territory with Joe Rogan, he's gonna get into that, and he's gonna walk into the weeds with you, right? And maybe there'll be some pushback, and he'll ask some questions, and he'll do this kind of stuff. But he's never... I shouldn't say never. There are obviously times when he's done this, but he rarely gets his hackles up and is just gonna put you in a place and all of this, because Vosh has taken his worldview and personalized it, and he just sounds like a clueless little boy, and so I just am like, well, I don't know why people watch him. He's just boring. And Has I kind of think the same way. Like, anytime I've listened to anything he's had to say, he just sounds like you can string together a bunch of words and say things, but it doesn't make sense. I've never heard him say anything that made sense. It's just a bunch of strung together. I guess he's interesting in kind of a Dadaist sort of way, because he's just vomiting out a bunch of shit. And I suspect he has read stuff, right? But I think he's popular for the same reason why a Magic 8 Ball is popular. Because you're going to shake it, and you're going to look at it, and you never know what it's going to say. That's it. But again, I find him to be quite boring and uninteresting. I don't think he has unique or interesting takes, and I don't think he really thinks that hard about the things that he says. So that's what's always been shocking to me about these guys. So they're just kind of boring, you know? I just came back from Chapters, trying to find me physical copies of Marx and Lenin. Yeah, instead I found a bunch of lib anti-communist propaganda. Also Douglas Murray on the shelf. Awesome. Yeah, you're going to have to order it, dude. It's as simple as that. You're just going to have to bite the bullet. Do it by Amazon. If you want physical copies of stuff, like all of the, especially places like Chapters. Like Chapters isn't going to carry that shit. They're not interested. Those guys are putting the 12 Rules for Life on at a 30% discount and ordering 1,000 copies, right? How do you get these ideas into the culture? You order 100,000 copies and give them away for free. Like that's basically how you do it. Just ask the Christians, right? You can print a bunch of Bibles, get them into the culture. Yeah, by linking the two, you can poison two wells, maybe. Oh, maybe, yeah. Well, I mean, the CIA knows better than any organization that if you attempted to merge communism with fascism, the fascists will eventually kill the communists, right? So they're pretty fine with that. You can't poison a poisoned well. Like fascism is by definition a poisoned well, and so hopefully they're gonna, in their mind, they think they're gonna link communism to fascism and thereby poison communism. And then fascism will be as fascism is. And if it comes down to it, and this is the reason ultimately why linking the two together is a losing proposition from the communist side, is that eventually there will come a point when the two need to sit down and have a conversation about how to move forward and how to deal with the inconsistencies that exist within their two modes of operating. And the communists will sit down and be like, let's have a robust negotiation and do some voting and come to terms, and then the fascists will pull out guns and shoot. Like, that's why it just won't work. Considering breasts are feeding devices first and foremost, banning them as asinine, absolutely. Like the truth is that the reason why we cannot have conversations about sexuality and sex in this culture is because we are children. Because when we look at members of the opposite sex, or of the same sex if you're homosexual, or whatever, right? When you look at a person who you are sexually attracted to, that generates inside of us a feeling. And you guys know my opinions on feelings and emotions. We do not have a firm grasp on this stuff, right? Like, I was thinking just the other day, it's interesting that I've got this chakra thing up, and I've got a flag, a communist flag and a Canadian flag, and I haven't really put them up. I haven't felt really motivated to put them up, and I should. I admit that. But I think it's because I first and foremost want to draw people's attention. Like, we do not have a grip on our own emotional states. And nowhere is that more obvious to me than in how we are trying to deal with sex and sexuality. And I know in myself, anytime I talk about it, I feel right in my power chakra. That's exactly where I feel it. I feel a tightening. Because I feel as though I'm making myself very vulnerable by opening up and talking about sex and sexuality as in the culture, as a cultural force. And and I think I have to let that go and realize that we need to be talking about these things and how to deal with them and how to express them. Like, one of the things I've been seeing a lot on the social media is the quote-unquote rise of the manosphere, right? I'm sure you've seen this. And Andrew Tate sort of brought this to the fore for everybody. But there's a lot of commentators out there who are part of this, quote-unquote manosphere kind of group. And basically it's and I don't think that they're particularly shocking, right? Like, lots of people think that they're kind of shocking. I don't. Like, the battle of the sexes has been raging on for thousands of years, right? There have been misogynists in the conversation for thousands of years, right? It's nothing new, right? But I will say that what is kind of obvious to me about these guys in the quote-unquote manosphere is they seem to be mistaking the outcomes of capitalism as a woman problem, right? So women are also being crushed by capital, right? Women are also being commodified, and sex is being commodified. And when you enter into that kind of arrangement, there's a lot of alienation that happens, and there's a lot of fear that happens. And to me, the biggest thing that is not being discussed about sex in the society is that sex is safer for men than women. That for men, sex is have sex, right? And maybe it'll suck, maybe it'll be bad, maybe something crazy will happen, right? And then walk away from it. For women, there is always the underlying fear of pregnancy. Always, right? That never goes away. Doesn't matter if you wear a condom, doesn't matter if you're like on the pill, doesn't matter. There's always this little tiny underpinning fear that exists that I could get pregnant, right? I know, buddy. I know. We're talking about sex and sexuality. I know. Look at this guy. He's like losing his mind. I'm talking about sex. You little pervert. You little pervert. And people don't want to acknowledge, the manosphere especially doesn't want to acknowledge that it is this fear. You guys see the chakra. Well, what's the root? Like, what's the root? Right? Stability, safety. What destabilizes it? Fear destabilizes it, right? And so we're existing in a society where at base, right, the men are walking around being like, well, what's the problem? I don't get it. Like, oh, these bitches just be crazy, right? That kind of stuff. Whereas women are walking around being like, we have to be really careful. We have to be really careful. And especially in an America that's getting rid of things like Roe v. Wade, especially in an America that's doing everything it can to demonize sex and to make sex more of a scary kind of a proposition, right, for women. So even if you get into a relationship with a woman and they feel relaxed and they feel like, okay, this is a guy that I can actually trust, and you get into this place of safety, and even if the guy has this kind of understanding that, like, yeah, the woman is at a higher level of risk than the man, right? Well, that little tiny kernel of fear still exists. It still exists within the consciousness of the woman. Because it has to. Like, and to me, that's normal as shit. Like, that's completely normal as shit. And that fear can shoot up through the system and just and blow away everything that is above it, right? Because energy originates at the base, right? It originates at the base and goes up, and it's safety, pleasure, power, or confidence, if you prefer, heart, expression, imagination or intellect, and then self-awareness, right? And it can just go and just eradicate everything before it. And men don't understand that that's the case. And so you end up with these stories that come out of the quote-unquote manosphere where, like, yeah, we were having a good time and everything was great and everything was fine. And then all of a sudden I'm getting blown away, right? And they don't understand that it's because women have this intrinsic risk that they're taking when it comes to having sex. And so I think that this risk, when it blows through the society, it expresses itself as a pushing away. Just push it away. Just get rid of it. I'm scared of that. That's scary, right? And so there's a sterilization of sex in the society, and we're not actually having this conversation. That a big reason why I think that sterilization or that repression occurs is because you have a lot of scared women in the society who are not really permitted to express their fears, because if they do start to talk about sex in the way that I'm currently talking about it, well, then they're a whore and a slut, and they get outed in the out group. And so there's all of this fear in the conversation that simply shouldn't be there. And I find it to be one of the most disgraceful things that we do as a people. That we just don't talk about sex as adults on a one-to-one. What are our desires? What do we want? How can we build a society to facilitate that, right? And like even expressing and articulating a desire to build a society that benefits this. Like, how do you think we end up in this situation where nobody's having kids? How do you think we get into these situations? Because we've created a society that is anti-sex, that is anti-sexuality. Even while we are pretending as though we're sex positive, because we're allowing pornography to spread throughout the culture, because we're allowing trans people and people to express their own personal expression of sexuality, right? So we have this sort of pretend version of sexuality, but the truth is that everybody's fucking terrified. Everybody's fucking terrified right now. And so under these conditions, sex becomes economic. Sex becomes something that is expressed as a commodity. And when you're living in a world where sex is a commodity, everyone's going to be miserable, right? No one's feeling safe. Everyone's going to be miserable. No one's going to be certain about how they stand or where they get. It's going to be very destabilizing. No one can have expressions of empathy or compassion or love for one another, right? And everyone's going to be crying about it, screaming about it, blaming the other side. We're seeing a lot of that. Men are blaming women. Women are blaming men. Men are like this. Men just want this. Well, women are just crazy. They're just doing this, right? Seeing a lot of that. And we're just going to get caught in delusions about it. And pretend, and we're going to have a lot of guys walking around like Andrew Tate who think that they're king shit of Turd Mountain when they're just some exploitive asshole, right? John, have you read The History of Sexuality by Michael Foucault? I have not. I haven't read a lot of Foucault. I feel like when I went through Chomsky, I got very turned off by Foucault. But now I'm older, and I don't really venerate Chomsky in the same way that I did. Maybe I should. Honestly, I would fly a communist flag on my house, but I would seriously be afraid of being firebombed, and my kids are there quite a bit. Oh, yeah. Don't want to involve any of them in confrontational political message that could possibly end up in violence. Yeah, safety comes first, dude. Absolutely. Like, isn't that interesting, right? Isn't that interesting that there's a like, if somebody flies a Confederate flag, they're probably not going to experience that kind of thing, right? I saw Socialist Action's posters around my school, and they're all torn up. One of them had commie scum written over it. Yeah, of course. Of course. I mean, that makes sense, right? Like, we're still teaching kids 1984. Like, I work with a 16-year-old kid, right? He works in the dish pit where I work. And he's reading 1984 right now, right? Like, he's going through Animal Farm right now. Like, they're still teaching these kids anti-communist propaganda. So I'm not surprised at all to see that kind of thing happen, right? And, you prefer Foucault to Chomsky. I think I'm at a point now in my life where I'm happy to no longer have preferences. You know, everyone usually has something interesting to contribute. And sure, you don't agree with everything they say and all of that kind of stuff, but I think that, like, I feel like I am ready to right now I'm on a real, I'm going back through The Wealth of Nations, and then I've never actually gone through Ricard's work, and so that's my goal for myself for the next little bit, is to go through The Wealth of Nations, then to go through the work of Ricard, and then go through Marx again after having done that. And then after that, I think I'll be ready to move on to probably someone like Foucault or something like that, right? If I don't get distracted, because you guys know me, I'm high level distracted all the time. High level distracted all the time. Marx is obviously number one. Yeah. I mean, like, he's just like a guy who's basically like Marx. Marx's strength comes from just the basic statement that there is an ownership class and an owned class, and that by itself, like that core statement that there's owners and owned, that seminal kind of planting the flag and everything emanates from that. That's the real strength of his work. If you read The Wealth of Nations, Adam Smith is like he doesn't hide that. Like, he's pretty upfront about it, but he doesn't really say. He kind of just says it in a passing observational sort of a sense that, like, there's an investor and they invest money and then there's profits, right, and all this kind of stuff. Like, he talks about it in a very kind of like, this is the way of it, but he doesn't really take it and say this is a central antagonism, that this is a conflict between these two men, between these two forces, right? That for Smith, that conflict is just sort of an observation of how the system is. Whereas for Marx, it is the focal point. It is the point upon which the society turns. And I think that focus from Marx is what elevates him and what really takes him into the next sort of level. That as we move forward as a species and move away from capitalism, the Marx will carry through, and we will refer back to Marx again and again. Whereas I feel like people like Smith will fade out of our consciousness more and more and more. Which isn't to say that I think Smith is bad. I mean, I consider Smith to be very. You should actually read Adam Smith, if only to say to these guys who use Adam Smith's ideas inappropriately, like, that's not what that is. Like, the invisible hand of the market. Like, Smith doesn't say the invisible hand of the market as like this is a good way to do this and we should organize it. Quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. So, doesn't 1984 feel like an accidental critique of capitalism? I honestly like the book, but obviously have to detach it from its author, which I'm still reconciling the ethics of. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty common, isn't it? Right? To project these sort of ideas. Like, and you're seeing that phenomenon throughout the internet these days. Right? How often do you look at along the internet and someone is describing capitalism and then they say, and that's why communism is bad? It's like, you literally just described capitalism. Like, that's how capitalism is, right? And there's a kind of cluelessness that comes along with all of this. Maybe that accidental critique might be a good thought to put into your coworker's mind. I mean, it's a... Like 1984 is like a really... What's odd to me about the fact that we're still teaching these books is that, like, they're fictional, right? Like, that's the part of it that I get a little, like, that's what makes it odd, right? Like 1984, Animal Farm, right? Like, these sorts of texts, like the Gulag Archipelago, right? These are fictional works, right? We have academic works. Like, we've got, like, nonfiction studies. Like, we've got these sorts of things. If we wanted to actually have a conversation about communism and the communist societies, if we wanted to actually analyze them and talk about them, right? We have this work, like, and even modern work, right? Since they opened up the Soviet archives, right? We've got this stuff, and it's very telling to me that we are still handing kids a fairy tale book that was written by somebody who was involved with the British intelligence, right? And saying this is how it was. That to me is where it all fails. Milo, buddy, what do you need? What do you need? Where's your toy, buddy? What do you need? You're whining at me, and I don't know why. What do you need? What do you need, buddy? What do you need? What do you need? Solve your problems, buddy. I'm probably going to pause in just a minute and give my little dog some peanut butter. Oh, someone's speaking French in chat. I wish I could speak French. John Foucault discussed the idea of the panopticon. See, Anemone, you know more about these ideas than I do. The panopticon. All right. Well, seeing as my little dog just ruined my train of thought. The climate crisis will make road and transit maintenance very expensive. No shit. Like, no shit. Right? If what is the number one thing that ruins infrastructure, right? It's the elements. And we're creating a system that's going to make the elements even more ridiculous, right? It's going to we're going to have extreme weather. Like, this is something that I think one of the big reasons why I do this channel is for us to just get into a place of acknowledgement where we're just because I find for myself, it's easy to get caught in like the fear of things to come or to imagine things to come, right? Or what we might call worry, right? And so much of how to defeat worry and defeat fear and find a way out of the sort of stasis that things like depression and anxiety can bring on to us, right? And to find a way to move forward and find a way to get out of that stasis and find your way into action is simple acknowledgement that these things are going to begin happening, right? And instead of us going, oh my God, and just like falling in your bed, right? Which, you know, we all do and have done, certainly, that we have a good one, Jester. Good to see you too, bud. Thanks for popping in. We have to just acknowledge, like, the droughts are going to get worse. The dry periods are going to get worse, more extreme. The rains are going to get worse, more extreme. The hurricanes are going to get more extreme. The tornadoes are going to get more extreme. The weather is going to just get more extreme. And it's interesting to me that as this process is unfolding, it seems to be the only way these narratives are penetrating into the wider consciousness is by how much it's going to cost us. And not cost us in terms of like our ability to live in the world, right? Not cost us in terms of how how much more difficult it's going to be to live in the world, but rather how much money is it going to cost? What impact is it going to have on the financial sector, right? And I'm seeing more and more articles like this because I think that what's deeply unfortunate about the way our society has configured itself is that if you can't make it make sense to the financial capitalist mind, then it doesn't make sense. And that's the only expression that seems to break through to huge sections of the populace. Like, not just conservatives, but also liberals need to be convinced that the climate crisis is going to cost a lot of money. And and if you can't do that, then you're not really talking. And it's kind of sad, in my view. Like, it's sad that we've degraded so much as a people in this regard. It's not enough to say, hey, there's going to be a drought and a bunch of people are going to starve, right? That doesn't seem to matter to conservatives and liberals. What seems to matter is how much money is that going to cost us. As Doug Ford looks to break ground on new highways, Ontario's financial watchdog is warning that extreme climate events will drive basic maintenance costs on transportation infrastructure drastically higher. In a new report out today, the Financial Accountability Office projects that extreme rainfall, heat, and freeze-thaw cycle caused by the warming of the planet will increase the costs of maintaining roads, highways, bridges, sidewalks, transit, and rail by an average of $1.5 billion per year in this decade. Have a good one, Jack. We're already falling behind on our maintenance. We're already falling behind on our maintenance of roads and infrastructure, right? We're already doing that. If you guys can hear that little squeaky ball, my dog is burying a little squeaky ball. Yep, there he goes. Because I'm alone talking in a room, and so he's insisting that I'm talking to him. Isn't that swell? Milo, you're interrupting the stream for everybody. Did you know that? Did you know that there's dozens of people? There are dozens of us, Milo, that are listening in right now. And did you know that you're interrupting that with your cuteness, your little ball squeaking away? I hope that when I come, that should reincarnation be a thing and I come back, that I either come back as a bird or a dog. Yeah, Milo doesn't give a fuck. That's right. Oh, I know, Mr. Milo. Oh, I know. Okay, guys, I've got to pause for just a second because I know exactly what this little guy is all about. Okay, Milo, we're gonna help you out, buddy. We're gonna help you out. No, don't worry about the ball. I don't care about your ball. What are we doing? What are we doing? Yeah, that's right. You know what's coming. It's peanut butter time for Mr. Milo. Peanut butter time. Peanut butter time. What time is it? It's peanut butter time. Milo wants some peanut butter. Milo wants some peanut butter. Peanut butter, peanut butter, peanut butter time. How do you like the peanut butter song, guys? I hope that that's inspiring your day. I hope that you're dancing away to the peanut butter song. Peanut butter jelly time. Peanut butter jelly time. Peanut butter jelly time. Peanut butter jelly. Peanut butter jelly. Peanut butter jelly with a baseball bat. Sit. There you go, buddy. There you go. What a little guy. Little cartoon character, man. Like, no wonder we like keeping pets around. They're just like little cartoon characters in our lives, right? Like, you go back and look at the old Looney Tunes stuff, and it's all animals. It's like, of course it's all animals. Of course it's animals, right? In the U.S., they're depaving roads. Yeah, there are already potholes everywhere, right? Wait for the big infrastructure projects to start falling apart, right? The interstate highways, right? The big bridges, right? It's all going to fall apart. Like, it's all going to fall apart. And none of that infrastructure directly benefits the wealth of the billionaire class. And so they don't care. Like, they don't use those roads. They don't go over that infrastructure. They don't care. It doesn't matter to them, right? So none of that's actually going to be looked at, right? And they'll eventually start tearing a lot of this stuff down because it's going to fall down. And they're, as Grinning says, they're depaving the roads, right? Here's a great chart, right? This is a huge article. I'm not going to read all of it. It's important that as we renovate and build new things, that we keep the climate in mind and spend the money we need to make sure that everything is resilient going forward, Weltmart said. And if you're going to build it out so it's going to do the job you intend it to do between now and 2100. Our premier is a climate change denier. He shut down a bunch of 700 climate change programs. They're not going to build anything that is resilient. They're not interested in that, right? Yeah. Authoritarianism has its benefits. In China, it takes 45 days to install a bridge. In the US, it takes years. This word, authoritarianism, I find this word to be fascinating. Like, let's look it up. Authoritarianism meaning, right? An enforcement or advocacy of strict obedience to authority at the expense of personal freedom. A lack of concern for the wishes or opinions of others. So what I find really odd about this, how this is used in Western civilization, authoritarianism, is that more and more it does seem to be used for getting things done. That if you can get things done quickly, you're authoritarian. Whereas if in using this definition, right? So what's quote unquote personal freedom? Well, personal freedom in Western civilization seems to mean the oligarchy gets to do what it wants, right? Yeah, authoritarianism is free healthcare now. Exactly, right? Like, social systems are authoritarian. That what's freedom? Well, freedom means having systems where people have to sell themselves to an oligarchy. That's freedom. That's like literally the libertarian definition of freedom. When they're talking about freedom, what they're talking about is selling yourself to an oligarchy, right? And authoritarian is having a system that responds to your needs, right? So like the Chinese system, people always say the Chinese system is authoritarian, right? That, oh, well, it's an authoritarian model. And why? Because it's responding to the needs of the people, and it's looking at the capitalist oligarchy and saying, get out of the way. And if the capitalist oligarchy gets in the way, the quote-unquote authoritarian, democratically elected Chinese Communist Party pushes us out of the way. And that's called authoritarian, right? It's very strange to me. Like, China has an elected body called the National People's Congress that actually responds to the needs of the people, because it knows that if it doesn't, it's going to get pushed out, or it's going to be corrupted by the oligarchy and then cease to operate. And so they're working very hard to create a system that doesn't get corrupted by the oligarchy and by the capitalist forces. And so we end up with this kind of a situation where, yeah, of course, oligarchs are going to say that a system that opposes them is bad and use language like authoritarian in order to describe it, because they want to return to slavery, right? Like, that's their goal. Like, that's their goal. Like, yeah, I'm sure that the Confederates called the Northerners authoritarian while the Northerners were trying to free the slaves. Like, I'm absolutely positive of that. So I don't really take this authoritarian word. When people start using authoritarian to describe anything, I usually am just like, I don't really think that it resonates with me the way I think people think it should. Like, yes, I'm sure the people of China, right, advocate strict obedience to an authority structure that does what they want, right? I think anybody would. Like, I would like to have roads that work. I'd like to have a clean city. I'd like to have a transit system that works. I'd like to have social systems. I'd like to ensure that people can't fall into grinding poverty, right? And if we elect a system that actually does all of that, that's authoritarian. Okay. Like, in comparison to the freedom to sell yourself to oligarchs, I suppose. Yeah, the road I used to live on had huge potholes in it for over 10 years. Yeah. Like, because that road is probably owned by someone and they don't care. Like, they don't care. Like, they don't, what do they care if it's got potholes on it? They don't drive on it. They live in, like, fucking California or something. Yeah, not letting people die from COVID is authoritarianism. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like, the one of the things that people don't talk about very often in the United States is, like, big reason why there's this, like, quote unquote labor shortage or a labor crisis going on is, like, 1 million people died. Like, that's going to create problems in your labor force. It's going to create, like, distortions in the labor pool, right? And then you have a whole bunch of people retiring because the whole COVID thing happened and they thought to themselves, well, I'm almost at retirement age now. I'm just going to go. I'm just going to, a few years early, I'll just push off, right? And it all happened all at once. So, of course, it's creating a distortion in the labor market, right? And because there isn't actually any organization that's actually attempting to rationally work for the benefit of the people, it's all just chaos, right? And what's the response? Oh, nobody wants to work anymore. Like, no, 1 million people died, motherfucker. Like, what? Those people can't work. They died. Like, what do you want? It was a provincial road, back road. They eventually ripped up the pavement, chip sealed it. Fantastic. Just fantastic, man. Like, it's just going to be a disaster, eh? We're just heading for these, like, amazing disasters. Like, isn't it funny how quickly we all just completely forgot about the flood that happened in British Columbia? Right? Isn't it cool how, like, we've immediately forgotten how a climate change related flood, like, killed, like, what was it, 6 million cattle, not cattle, but like 6 million farm animals. Like, it flooded like a huge section of British Columbia, wiped out the Trans-Canada Highway going into Vancouver, and we all just kind of forgot about it, you know? Yeah, so labor shortage equals people aren't desperate enough to take $7 an hour for a 15-hour per week job. Well, and it's not even about desperation. It's about literally, like, that doesn't pay my bills, so why should I do it? Right? Like, if the choice for a person is to not be able to pay my bills but have my free time versus not being able to pay my bills but also working for you, I know which one I'm picking. Hey Chris, how you doing, bud? Hey John, what's the best argument for universal housing? Cons will make the claim it would not incentivize people to work if their biggest expense would be eliminated. I mean, I think the first thing you should do is point out that that's essentially a slave argument, right? That you're the conservatives. A conservative who uses this argument is essentially admitting that capitalism is a coercive slave system. I think that's the first thing to point out. We shouldn't be pretending anymore. We shouldn't be holding back on these people anymore, right? These people are delusional. They believe that Santa Claus is real and that Jesus Christ is coming back at any moment, right? If you're making the claim that a free person who doesn't have to be coerced by a slave system won't work anymore, well, then they're just admitting it on the face of it. And that by itself is reason enough to fight against it, that it's a coercive slave system. That's reason enough. You don't need to create any other argument except their admission, right? Oh, so you admit that it's a coercive slave system. That's the reason to fight against it. I don't need to go any further than that, right? Like, unless you actually think slavery should happen, and then I guess we do have to have a serious conversation about why slavery is wrong, right? But if you don't want to go down that line, and I respect why you don't want to go down that line, I mean, if that's the premise that they're setting up, I mean, that's the response. That they want slavery. It's as simple as that. You could also say, like, yeah, the people want to work. People's own impulse is to work. They're just not going to work for a capitalist, right? They're just not going to work for a useless, worthless, harmful pursuit, right? They're not going to work for slavers. They're not going to work for people who are going to abuse them. They're not going to work for people who are going to denigrate them and make their lives harder, right? They're going to pursue work that they think is valuable. They're going to pursue work that they think is going to help the people around them. You don't need to look any farther than the volunteer system, right? If people exclusively work for money, if coercion and slavery and the fear of not having food and shelter is the exclusive source of us working, then how do you explain the volunteer system, right? That there are millions of productive hours that get funneled into volunteer work that are uncoerced and people just do them. Why? Because people are incentivized to do work that goes beyond this pathetic slave system mindset that the conservatives put forward, and lays complete waste to their argument. That if it wasn't, like, if we were just exclusively motivated by getting food and shelter, then you would expect to see no volunteer service. No one would ever put any time into that. Everybody would just stay home, right? So how do you explain that? Well, the only way to explain it rationally, and they're not rational, so this might not work, but the only way to explain it is to say, people want to work. People understand that work is valuable, not only valuable for the community, but valuable for themselves, right? That they just don't want to work for worthless, pathetic slavers. It's very simple. Like, people want to work. Just, they don't, that the values of the working class does not align with the values of the capitalist class. It really is that simple. And in terms of universal housing, like, because you're talking to conservatives, forget about empathy and compassion arguments, right? Forget about the fact that, like, nobody chooses to be here, like, nobody consents to be here, right? They only care about their own personal wealth, right? That's all they care about. And whenever I get into conversations with conservatives, I say this to them, like, you only care about your wallet, so then it's cheaper for you. It's cheaper for you to provide housing to citizens than it is to pay for the negative outcomes of keeping that housing away from them, right? That if you tell them, oh, you have failed to sell yourself to a capitalist death cult, then you're going to be homeless. Well, you got to pay for food banks. You got to, like, unless you're fine with people starving in the street, which I think many of these people are, but you can say to them, like, if you're not fine with people just starving to death in the streets, right, then that means that you've got to pay for a food bank. That means that you got to pay for an emergency shelter. That means that you got to pay for emergency healthcare services. That means that you've got to pay for police services, right? All of these things, when you stack them up, they cost way more than just giving a person a room that's already empty in the first place, right? Like, I don't try to talk to these people about empathy anymore. I learned a long time ago, these people have no empathy. They exclusively care about their money. And the truth is that they're so degenerate and so incapable of understanding that they don't even understand that they're spending more to increase people's suffering. And if you get to that point and they're still kind of shuffling their feet at you, you get to just say to them, like, oh, so you want to spend more to ensure that there are homeless people that can be beat up with cops, right? Because that's what they want. It's getting obvious, and it's getting more and more obvious by the day, that there are people in the society that are happy to create homeless people and then beat them up with cops. They want to spend more. They do spend more. And if you gave them the option to spend less and have housed people, or spend more and have homeless people who can get beat up, they will spend more to have cops beat up homeless people. Right? And we are at the point now where we should be presenting this to them and saying, which one of these two people do you want to be? Do you want to spend less and house people, or do you want to spend more and have homeless people get beat up by cops? Because that is the choice. Right? It's up to them. Yeah, cons are cool with slavery, honestly. Like, they are. Like, the capitalism is a slave system. Slavery is too expensive. Employment lets you pay less than the minimum to survive. Yeah, owning the slaves directly is a more expensive system. Yeah, the wage slave system is more effective. Yeah, not to mention how many expenses already have, like, healthcare costs, travel, etc. Yeah. There's so much empty commercial real estate near me, it's disgusting. Yeah. Like, and I know here in the city of Toronto, like, the owners of those places are completely disincentivized to actually fill them, right? They don't pay rent on empty spaces, right? Or they don't pay property tax, rather, on empty spaces. So they're just completely incentivized to let it be empty. They only start paying taxes on those properties if there's someone in them. And so they can just sit on them and be empty until they can basically say, like, they never need to negotiate with some small scale business. They never need to negotiate with a guy who's like, hey, I'd like to put in, like, a board game cafe here. I think that would really help the neighborhood out. It would be like a great little cool place. People could come and we could have, like, a little space like that. No, fuck you. I want an A&W. I want an H&M. right? That's so we've essentially built into the model a gentrification system that only the wealthy, like, if I never need to pay tax on a property until it gets filled, I can just sit on it and it'd be empty until finally the right person comes by, right? So I essentially have this big empty property right in the middle of a commercial district, and I can just sit on it for as long as I want, right? That's how it works. And so we're basically planting the seeds of it. And ensuring that, you know, all of the cool little districts and all the cool little markets and things like this and all the cool ideas and the little business and the local business owners and all this thing just never have a chance, right? Just never actually have a chance. So your neighborhoods all become lame and stupid, and because the people who own these businesses and the people who own the land don't actually live in the neighborhood, so they don't give a fuck at all. Like, they don't care at all. Did you ever read the article about the guy in Toronto who was shut down by cops for building small homes for the homeless? Yeah, I remember this. Yeah, I remember this guy. This guy's a hero, as far as I'm concerned. Toronto man building homes. Tiny shelters is what they were called. Yeah. This is like a big story about a year ago. Khalil Sevrite. Right? Come on now. Where are you going? Khalil Sevrite built himself a wooden shanty while living on the West Coast commune that started building similar lodgings for homeless people to survive the winter, and he was told to stop. Right? He was told to stop. Like, we're a degenerate culture. Like, we're completely degenerate. Like, here's a person who is doing this out of his own pocket and out of his own heart, right? But we know why he's told to stop, because we need to make sure that the homeless are as uncomfortable as possible, because it's a coercive system. It's a slave system, right? It's a slave system. We live in a system of wage slavery. Capitalism is a slave system. If we were to eliminate slavery from the system, it would stop functioning. It would not work. Oh yeah, the anti-homeless benches everywhere too. Yeah, and like so in our crusade against homelessness, right, and not to eradicate homelessness, but to make life hard for the homeless, we make our own environment as shitty as possible. Because if we made the outdoor environment nice, then the homeless might enjoy it, right? They might actually be comfortable there. They might actually live a life there, right? So we've got to make sure that everything is awful for everyone in our crusade against homeless people. I like Georgism for real estate taxes. It would lower the price of real estate and raise taxation. Owners would be incentivized to rent cheap or sell quickly. Georgism. I've looked into this before. Georgism, taxation. A single tax on land instead of taxing labor. Yeah, taxing land productivity would be increased to a level that will reduce poverty. Yeah, I mean, I actually agree with this idea. Like, why are we taxing labor? Like, why are we taxing, like, frauds like O'Leary always like to say, why are you taxing success? It's like, well, if you're successful at exploiting people, we're going to tax that, right? No, and taxing land ownership, like, we should have built into our systems, without a doubt, we should have built into our systems anti-monopolization, right? Like, it's all well and good that you can grow a business and get big and all that kind of stuff, but it's extremely harmful if that becomes all there is. Right? And sorry, like, I don't think that we should have a Starbucks, 28 Starbucks in every city. Like, I just don't think it's good. I think it's bad. Like, straight up, I think it's bad that we end up with this homogenous, lame culture that just is the same. Forget about any moral estimation. I just think it's fucking boring. Like, it's just fucking boring. Like, why travel anywhere? Why experience anything else? It's all the same. Yeah, it'd be awful. Fun fact, in the city where I live, a homeless 70-year-old man who roasted and sold chestnuts on the street got 130... Is that a 130,000 euro fine? Is that what that is? Fuck you. Even if that's a 130 euro fine, fuck you. Like, literally, how can you tell that the system has turned against the citizenry? Fuck you. Like, fuck you. Fuck you for telling me that. Fuck you. Fuck this. Fuck the IRS. Fuck that whole thing. Fuck everything about that thing that you just told me. Are you fucking kidding me? Roasting chestnuts. Come on. There's got to be an article on this. There's got to be an article on this. Fine from the IRS. The worst brain break I ever got when doing this is realizing that there's a sand shortage. The sand shortage was absolutely the worst. That fucking hurt my head. Yeah, please do, Base. Look into how I can find an article for that, because I want to know more. That's so fucking... No, I mean, I'm sorry, dude. Like, a homeless guy roasting chestnuts isn't that, like, the absolute... Shouldn't that absolutely be one of those, like, fucking capitalist success stories, right? Like, shouldn't that be one of those times where, like, this 70-year-old homeless man managed to pay rent by roasting chestnuts. Heartwarming story, instead of being a fucking dystopian nightmare story that it actually is, right? Like, and you're telling me that while this guy is literally just, like, on the side of a street corner roasting chestnuts, getting popular enough that he even gets the auspice of the IRS in the first place, right? That they come along and they're like, oh, it's $130,000. That might as well be $1 billion. The IRS might as well have come on to this 70-year-old man and been like, oh, we're going to give you a fine for $1 trillion. Like, it's becoming so obvious that we live in fascism. Like, and it's getting fucking worse. Like, the fascist system is getting way worse, and it's going to get worse. Like, that, I do TikTok videos as well, right? And somebody asked me not that long ago, I think it was literally last night, actually. They said, why don't we just take certain policies? Like, why do you feel you need to create... Basically, they were saying, why are you a communist instead of doing piecemeal reformism? Don't you think that comes with a bunch of baggage, that it's difficult to convince people? And I just said to them, like, first of all, I said, you're arguing for reformism. Here's why it doesn't work. But also, I said, in regard to the baggage argument, nothing is going to convince people that capitalism is a failure more than the system of capital itself. That the system of capital is going to degrade so badly and have outcomes that are so intolerable that people are going to recognize that the entire system of capital is fraudulent and unreformable. That to me is the biggest thing. That once the collapses actually set in, like, the building is here, right? This is a stable building that is strong. The building is here, right? It's not a prediction to say the building's going to go like that, right? So if the building is here, and guys like me are looking at the building going like, well, that's going to fall over. That's going to hit the ground, right? And then you have a whole bunch of people running around saying, like, maybe we can reform it. Maybe we can stick it up with sticks or something, right? That's not going to happen, right? Building's falling over, right? Well, when the building hits the ground, and everybody has a moment of like, oh shit, the building hit the ground. The building, it hit the ground. we're going to need people like myself walking around saying, hey guys, I've been watching this building fall down for a long time. Now that you've woken up and recognized that the building was falling over the whole time, and you've noticed it after it hit the ground, here's what happened, and here's how it goes, and incidentally, here's some solutions, right? Here's some ideas. Yeah, the sand story messed me up so bad. Yeah, radio, it was way worse than Brother Stare. Like, Brother Stare makes a type of sense, right? For those of you who don't know what we're talking about, Brother Stare was a pedophile evangelist who still gets spread out across radio waves throughout the United States, right? That makes a kind of a sense. It's like like a deluded fundamentalist Christian who touched little girls and has rallied this kind of thing. Like, that's not too much different than like the Charles Manson cult, right? Any of that kind of stuff. And so that's not really like brain breaking. It's just like a deeply unfortunate story that is frustrating, right? The sand shortage story, when I heard about the sand shortage story, that really fucked me up in a big way for a long time. And the reason why it fucked me up so much, is because, first of all, you've got to get through the whole, like, what the fuck are you even talking about sand shortage? The Sahara Desert is full of sand. What the fuck are you talking about? So you got to learn that all of our construction requires a certain type of sand, right? I'm just going to put something on while I talk. Oops. That's not what I wanted to do. A certain type of sand. So that's what you need to hear first. Then you need to kind of find out what type of sand it needs, why there's a shortage of that sand, right? So you got to find that all out. And then you got to, and then once you find all that out, then there's the recognition and the realization that the reason why we have the sand shortage is because we're trying to create a technology in order to use that other type of sand, right? And then it immediately, in my mind, connected to, so we're sitting here saying that we're going to solve climate change with technology when we can't even solve the problem of sand with technology. So that really fucked my brain up. It was like a whole series of just like... It lit my brain up, man. If there was like a brain scanner on my head when that was happening, I bet it would just be like... I had a headache. After it. I was very mad. And even now I'm talking about it and I can feel it. I can feel it in my brain. I'm just like, okay, John, it's fine. There's a sand shortage. Sure, there's a desert's worth of sand in the world. Sure, there's so much sand that when you watch like these Star Wars movies when they're on Tatooine or Lawrence of Arabia and all this, there's literally so much sand that you can't even comprehend it. But there's a sand shortage. Oh. And don't worry, though. We're going to solve it with the technology, although we haven't. But we're definitely going to solve climate change with technology, even though we can't solve the problem of a sand shortage. Honka, 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 honka. We're just clowns. We're just fucking clowns. I found a couple of articles about the chestnut roaster. Unfortunately, you're going to have to translate it from Greek. It's not been covered in English as far as I can see. Maybe we can run it through a Google Translate. That sometimes works out pretty nicely. Hey, Nut Milk, how you doing, bud? What are your thoughts about the media's portrayal of the situation in Ukraine? Nut Milk, trying to get me demonetized. Let's go. I don't care about being demonetized anymore. YouTube doesn't pay enough to make it worth my while. So, which is a great time to say like, share, subscribe, give me money, right? Give me some fucking money, guys. Like put some money in my Patreon. Become a Patreon. If you're only giving me $1, maybe make it $2. Give me some fucking money. Oh my Christ. The sand everywhere and not a drop to drink. Exactly. Okay. Thoughts on the media portrayal of the situation in Ukraine? Nut Milk, I'm going to assume that you're talking about the recent invasion by the Ukrainian forces, the little bit of land that they got. so the no, you can't send links. Just tell me what to. How did you find it? Thank you, Baldy McNosehair. I appreciate that, bud. Thank you, bud. I appreciate that. So the media's portrayal of the situation in Ukraine is more of just a propaganda victory, right? Like they're trying to portray it as though, look, we did an offensive against the Russians and we got a tiny little bit of land, right? And that means that the Russian forces are weakening and we're definitely going to continue forward and seek more victories and all this kind of stuff. And it's just a way to tell people, to convince people that, oh, Watson, good to see you, bud. It's just a way to convince people to continue supporting this war that is essentially already lost. That the offensive that the Ukrainians, which really was a NATO offensive, like the Ukrainian forces have been depleted. It's a NATO offensive at this point. It was what's called a Pyrrhic victory, right? And a Pyrrhic victory means that you win, technically, but you lose so many resources in the winning that it's not really worth it, right? Like if you defeat an army to get a piece of land that's worth $100, let's say, but it cost you $1,000 to get the $100 piece of land, you won, but it was a Pyrrhic victory. You lost more than you gained. And that's essentially what's happened in Ukraine. And of course, the media is going to report as if it's this great victory for us and we're going to win this war, just keep funneling money and accept the fact that you're going to freeze over the winter, right? Like, the West needs to convince the populace that the suffering that is about to be inflicted upon it, the inflation, right? The cold winter that's about to come, it needs to convince the populace that these extremely negative things that are absolutely going to happen to us because of this war are worth it. And if you can't show the people that you are capable of any form of victory in the conflict, and the people start to kind of scratch their heads about why are we there in the first place. And this is different than the Afghanistan and Iraq war, right? This is different because the Afghanistan and Iraq war we essentially forgot about. And while it does have like an effect, like instead of tax dollars going towards things like healthcare or education, they go towards another bomb that we blow up something with. But that's more of an abstract idea for people. They don't actually connect those dots. But when the heat goes off for people, when people are sitting in the dead of winter, shivering away in their own homes, when they're not able to watch TV, right? Because the energy bills are getting so blown out of proportion and so ridiculous, right? When a loaf of bread costs an hour of work, right? When prices get so extravagant and the suffering becomes so much, right? You've got to at least show people that you're capable of winning this thing and say to them, look, we're winning. Yes, you're suffering, but look, we're winning. But the truth is that the victory that they attained was not really much of a victory. They lost a bunch of resources getting it. They didn't actually make the Russians, they didn't bleed the Russians at all. Like the Russians saw it coming and fled. They retreated. So it wasn't even a fight for the most part. The land that the Americans and NATO got wasn't really crucial for Russia in the first place. And all it really did is it sped up Russia's timeline. That basically right after, they're setting up a referendum in the Donetsk and Lugansk region. So they're moving forward with their war goals, right? One of their major war goals being the getting the Donbass region. So they're going to hold a referendum, right? And now they're moving into mobilization, right? And it isn't like mass mobilization, but it is mobilization what they're doing. And so in 4 months' time, the Russians are going to field another 300,000 men. What's NATO going to do? Like, for real. Like, what's NATO going to do? So essentially, the NATO countries are about to experience huge price increases huge increases in energy prices. People are going to go hungry. People are going to freeze. It's going to be a brutal winter across Europe, right? And then at the end of that extremely brutal winter, Russia is going to put 300,000 people on the field and launch an offensive. You think people are going to keep supporting this? You think people are going to still be rah-rah waving their little flag after all this? I don't think so. Like, I don't think so at all. I think that the European nations are all going to experience upheaval. I think that you're going to see, like, in the UK, for example, like, the current leadership in the UK is going to be decimated. Like, it's going to be down to the bare bones. It's going to be as bad as the ouster of Mulroney was here, where the Conservatives went from having majority government to having 2 seats. Like, it's going to be a decimation. And you're going to see that across Europe. And in some cases, it may result in the populists swinging to more left-wing social democracy governments, right? More labor-based governments or all this. But in some cases, it's going to be overt fascists that take power, right? Like, it's just, and it's going to, so it's going to be extremely tumultuous and extremely erratic, right? And you're going to see the rise of figures throughout Europe that are just like, you're going to see extremists on all sides. You're going to see extremists on all sides, right? And they're just going to come up and some of them will take a look at NATO and be like, we are not part of this anymore, right? And some of them are going to, isn't this guy charming? Look at this guy. We're going to see a ton of that happen, right? We're going to see a ton of that happen all throughout Europe. And it's like written in the stars now. It's almost completely inevitable. Like, I don't know how anybody could plan to prevent it. And the EU knows it, right? That's why the EU is putting in like this big gigantic, they're taxing away like $140 billion from these energy companies and gonna put it into the economy as a windfall tax, right? Because they know what's happening. They know what's happening. They know that the populace is not going to tolerate this. Like, and they won't. You wouldn't. You wouldn't. If the lights just went out in your house, and the reason you were given is because we're fighting this war in Ukraine for some reason, you wouldn't. Like, all of these yellow and blue flags that everybody's flying around, right? They changed their Facebook profiles to yellow and blue flags. They're going to take those down, right? I'm not going to freeze my balls off for a country that's fucking across the world. Why are we there? What are we doing there? Why do we care? So of course the media needs to pretend as though what we're doing there is fighting the good fight and winning a fight. They've got to. And it's desperation at this point. And anytime I've seen any Western media reporting on it, you can see the desperation. You can see it. The people that are reporting are desperate to keep the populace on side. And they're going to lose. Because at the end of the day, what's going to happen to people is not ideological. It's going to be very real. And people will not watch their children shiver and starve. They will not. Especially a people as fragile as Westerners. It's just not going to happen. So expect massive upheaval. And expect the media to just keep bullshitting you about it, because it's all they've got left. All right, buddy. All right, buddy. Let's do this. Nothing. Absolutely nothing on this. Maybe if I do this. Of course, Google's probably like, what's this guy searching in Greek for? What the fuck is this? What is this? What is this fucking bullshit right here? Maybe if I do this. Okay. I'm looking at roasted nuts. So we're gonna change that into English. All right, here we go. Castanis is asked to pay 106,000 euros for an old fine. Okay, so it's an old fine. I've got nothing to eat. The professional declared that he will start a hunger strike. I'll have to. In 2015, Giorgos Dimo was summoned and fined $10,000, or euros I suppose, for illegally selling chestnuts at a stall in Aristoteles Square in Thessaloniki. At the time, his case caused a sensation and interventions, but until today, as he says, his fine has now been increased to 106,000 euros. The tax office sent them to me, he said yesterday in the lens of the Ant 1 television station. He himself is in a miserable financial situation and lives in a warehouse. According to the report, on Thursday, the municipal office carried out a sweep operation and collected all the illegal stalls, with the result that the chestnut stall, which he kept outside a small warehouse where he lives, was confiscated, along with the corn he had for sale. Yesterday morning, I was sleeping and the door was open. I fell asleep. They came at 6:30, took my stroller and wouldn't give it to me, he says. Now the brown-haired man is asked to pay 800 euros to get his cart back, but as he makes clear, he doesn't even have enough to eat. I have nothing to eat. I will now go on a hunger strike. Fuck this story. Fuck this. Are you kidding me? Like, are you kidding me? This is barbarism. This is fucking barbarism. Nothing short of it. Complete barbarism. Fuck this. We live in a fascist culture. That's all this is. That's all this is. All right, you guys are calling for it. You guys are calling for it. Oh, I hate that story. I hate that story so much. Fuck our barbarian culture. All right. I know, Ligandy, you called for an 8. We got a 7, 10, 4, 7. Here we go.
2022.
So many 7s already. I'm going for a 1.
Oh, has a number.
I'm a 1.
Numbers 1 through 10.
Oh.
Swirl the numbers.
Swirl the numbers. Jesus Christ, I'm not having any fun right now. I want to have fun. Today's number is
7.
Hey, I was this close. I was this close to dive in on the 7s, and I thought, nah, too many 7s. Fuck. I should have absolutely dived in on the 7. Damn it. Christopher De Silva, Baldy McNosehair, congratulations. You are the winners of today's number draw from David Lynch, the Big 7. May the energy of David Lynch carry into your life. May something esoteric and strange occur that makes you think to yourself, what the hell was that? And then after a couple of days, it'll all click in and you'll go, oh yeah, okay. Just saw your video on the communist representative they swatted in London a month ago. Nut Milk, I just want to clarify something because I misreported something there. I was very upset about that story, but Kessel's, why am I forgetting the name all of a sudden? She is not a communist representative any longer. She was part of the Communist Party, but she split from the Communist Party. Clara Sorrenti. We can get rid of it. She's no longer part of the Communist Party. She's separated from the Communist Party over a disagreement about some international issue. And she herself has said that she considers what's happening to her to be happening because she is trans and a trans advocate. And so I misreported on that. I take responsibility for that for myself. And so we should still support her, obviously. But I think that we've got to be accurate in what's going on. And it's fucking really unfortunate what's happening to her. It's really fucking unfortunate what's happening to her. She like literally flees the country. It's crazy what's happening to her, right? And it still does show like what the police did to her, right? Was deeply disturbing. Like I'm deeply disturbed by this story that anybody should have their door kicked in over the flimsiest of premises, right? The flimsiest of premises, have their equipment stolen, and then doxxed. And the doxing is where it just goes into absolute just hellscape. But for clarity's sake, right, and it's something that I have to remind on myself, we're not to the point yet where communists are having their doors kicked in. It's just trans people. Which I guess is better. What a fucking barbarian country. Like, we're fucking just barbarians, man. Like, just absolutely unbelievable. I'm going back to the fucking China walk, dude. I need to fucking walk around a fucking civilized country for a little while. You know what I really want? I really want to walk around the... Come on. I really want... Yeah. Give me some old school Chinese shit here. Yes. Yes, give me the old shit. Give me the old shit. That's what I'm talking about right there. Put this right into my brain, like right into my heart, just right here. Just hit me with it. Hit me with it, China. Come on, let's walk through the villages of China. I need some like old school like Chinese music. Right, that's what I need. That's yeah. There's not gonna be any music. I need some like old school, just like I'm walking around a Skyrim village, but it's a real place built by people. Look at how gorgeous this place is, man. Look at how gorgeous this place is. Cuba walk. Oh, that's an interesting thought. Yeah, I wonder. Oh my god. Man, I'm mad. Like, I'm really mad. Like, I'm feeling it. I feel how mad I am. I'm feeling really upset right now. Yeah, let's go, man. Let's go. I can walk through Havana. Havana was a beautiful place. That was a beautiful place. I don't know why they don't put music over these. Although, at the same time, it's like, it is nice to just have, like, a good walk, right? Whew. Those roundhouses are called Tulu. Thanks, bud. I appreciate that. Appreciate that. Yeah, Twitch is unilaterally cutting pay for small to medium streamers. Yep, that's how it's gonna go, man. That's why I don't really care about demonetization anymore. Like, YouTube's not really making it worth my while. Like, it could only really make it worth my while if I became like a huge streamer, right? Like if I became like if I was getting like I don't know, 100,000 views, right? Then I could see how it would be like pretty worth my while. But it's not really worth my while right now. So if they're gonna like do a limited or demonetize something, I just don't care anymore. It just doesn't matter. So I'm gonna keep relying on you guys. Keep relying on your support. Thank you so much for your financial support. Thank you to those who are my Patreons. If you're not a Patreon, please consider becoming one. Right? Please consider donating. Right? Every tiny little bit helps. Even $1 gets you into the Discord. Right? I try to provide extra stuff for people who donate more, but, you know, life is fucked up and crazy. I am still writing, and I'm going to be dedicating more to my writing. And I think I will be sharing some of that writing with people who are higher level donators, because I do think that there are some of you that are actually interested in some of the art that I produce. So God help me, I'm trying, guys. But it does feel like, sometimes it feels just like thrashing around while you're drowning, you know? I'm just glad that we're all thrashing around together. The U.S. once mistaken them as missile silos. That's hilarious, Ligandese. That's fucking hilarious as shit. Yeah, Cuba is way more beautiful now that there's no slaves and the government makes sure nobody loses and everybody wins. Yeah. And Adam, Keffels said recently that she is a socialist. One of the reasons why she left the Communist Party appears to be is that she put forward a motion for the party to recognize Canada as settler colonial country, but was rejected by the country by the party. Yeah, I've experienced that myself. going into like socialist and communist things and putting forward motions like that. It seems like people are very conservative. Like it's very difficult to actually move the bar and to move things in that way. Like it requires a lot of patience, a lot of patience. So it was that she put forward the motion for the party to recognize Canada as a settler colonial. So she leaves the party because it's not left enough for her. That's actually pretty baller, if you ask me. It was a 7 today, Mocked. It was a 7. I thought of you. I should have said it at the time. Good for you, but we'll count it. We count those from you, Mocked. We count those. Because it's always a 7 with you, bud. Yeah, the old school cars. No, Cuba's a beautiful place, man. My favorite thing, like, I love it when capitalist types take a look at like the Soviet architecture, right, with the apartment buildings, and they're like, "Oh, this Soviet architecture is so ugly," and it's like, yeah, you know what else is really ugly? Homelessness. Fucking all those homeless tents you have throughout America are real pretty and real beautiful, right? Raymond Brown visited Cuba before the revolution. He noticed every road went from the sugar plantations to the refineries to the seaports. Yeah, that's just some basic. Absolutely. Fucking yeah. I mean, Cuba's not that big, right? So to say that like every road, it's like, yeah, of course. Like it's not like there's this huge sprawling, country. Skid Row's pretty ugly. Unclear if that's a fact for why she left. Brother Q tweeted she put forward the motion and left shortly after. Oh, so that's speculative is what you're saying, Adam, but it is like the series of events, so it does sort of make a type of sense. Yeah. Well, and I'm sure the Soviets loved the apartments better than the homelessness, right? I know I would. Like, and like if you're slapping up infrastructure like that, right? Like if you're slapping up infrastructure like that, you gotta accept certain things, right? Like you just got to accept certain things, and then it's after you set that stuff up that you can come through and do like an aesthetic sort of shifting. Like I take a look at a lot of the infrastructure that exists in North Korea, right? We did a walk around video of some of the North Korean cities not that long ago, and straight up, it's like, yeah, it's fairly bleak. Like, let's be honest. Oh, defeated. Socialist design the modern kitchen. There you go. Like, you just got to like. So I took a look at like the North Korean infrastructure, and it's like, yeah, it's straight up fairly bleak, kind of colorless. The color palette that they choose, they really love that mint green over in North Korea, and I got to tell you, I hate it. Like, I'm not saying this is like a knock on North Korea, but they love this color, this like mintish sort of washed out green color so much that many of their buildings are that color. And I'm just like, that's gotta be like a total culture kind of a thing, right? Absolute cultural thing. But definitely the infrastructure was very blocky, right? Very much like we need buildings built, let's build them. And what's going to happen is that as time moves forward, some North Korean guy is going to come in and be like, let's make a lot of this more aesthetically pleasing. Let's put in stuff. Let's put some planters here. Let's do some stuff, right? And that's going to happen, right? And that's going to happen. But I mean, what Westerners don't like to acknowledge about a place like North Korea is that it was leveled to rubble by the Americans and Imperial Japan, right? Like clean, straight out leveled to rubble. So everything they have is new. It's completely built from the ground up over a very short period of time, right? And so it's takes a lot of time. Takes a lot of time to do that kind of shit, and then make it also aesthetically pleasing. Yeah, look how clean everything is, eh? You notice how there's no tents anywhere? You notice how there's no, like, people just sleeping on the streets and shit? You notice that? I noticed that. If you want to know why you better Revolution, watch The Godfather 2. There's some scenes of real debauchery. You can kind of understand why the population hated the powerful. Yeah, I mean, doesn't take a fucking genius to figure out that, like, America was doing what America does. The question I have often had about Cuba is why hasn't America just gone in there and blown it up the way they blow everything else up? You know? Like, is the Cuban military and, like, is Fidel Castro and, like, are these guys actually that organized? Are they so well organized that the American military takes a look at them and goes, yeah, we're going to lose that? Like, is that really actually what's going on? It seems kind of unbelievable, honestly, because, like, what's the population of Cuba? You know, I've just always thought, like, why aren't they just going in there and blowing the place up like they always do? Population of Cuba. Like, it's a third the population of Canada, you know? Like, it seems so wild to me. It would be another Iraq? Yeah, probably. Like, the people of Cuba aren't just gonna not fight. I think they're probably aware of that. And I guess it is one of those things, like, what do you get for it? You know, like, what are you actually getting? It's like, it's not like Cuba has like gigantic oil reserves, you know? So I bet you some bean counter just did a cost benefit analysis and was like, sure, we'd get some sugar plantations, like, sure, we'd get some, like, base luxury goods and all that, but, like, we're not gonna, it's not, the war won't pay for itself. Whereas the justification for places like Iraq and Afghanistan and Venezuela and all this is that the war will pay for itself, right? Soviet architecture was not only ingenious for being sturdy and cost-effective, but they were also designed to help residents socialize. Yeah, absolutely. I'm going through civil engineer school, so I guess I have some authority to speak from. Awesome, dude. Well, I mean, like, and the Soviet infrastructure needs to withstand the Soviet winters, right? It needs to be strong, right? That's got to be your primary concern, right? Like, it's like, when I see some of the shit that's getting built here in Toronto, I, like, look at it and I'm like, that's gonna last 50 years. Like, so many of the condos that are getting put up here in Toronto are just, like, glass abominations that are gonna fall over in 50 years. Like, they're just gonna look like shit, and they're not gonna withstand the winter. They're shoddily made, right? And the Soviets were probably thinking to themselves, okay, we've got this opportunity to build a structure. Let's build a structure that in 100 years will still basically be here and still be the way it is. There's an excellent video about Eastern Bloc architecture on YouTube. Yeah, isn't there always? Isn't there always? We have we have the world at our fingertips. We've got all of the knowledge of humanity at our fingertips, and we just don't use it. We just, like, watch cat videos all day long. Like, we could literally be, like, having a discussion right now about the Iliad or something, right? Like, and everybody could have just, like, read this or listened to it on an audiobook or something. Everybody could be constantly just informing themselves about cool stuff all the time, right? And our culture could just be this rich culture of high literacy where we're all having, like, big scale discussions. But the trouble is that we've demonized certain forms of knowledge so badly that that you can't really engage in them seriously. Like, straight up, the conversation that's happening right now in the United States in regards to communism or socialism is literally, should we bother reading? Like, it's literally what's happening in the United States. Yeah, exactly. PragerU gets more watch time than anything intellectual because we live in hell, right? Exactly, because the billionaire class. So we're becoming exceptionally literate in disinformation. That's what's happened. That all of we're basically having conversations about, does reality exist or not? That seems to be the conversation that we're really having. Like, and what you end up with is huge segments of the population who think that they have some kind of literacy on the subject, but are essentially just regurgitating PragerU videos. It's fucking ridiculous as shit. Isn't that right, Mr. Milo? Isn't that right? It's ridiculous. Anybody who watches a PragerU video unironically is a total fucking dumbass. Isn't that right? Isn't that right? Isn't that right? Ah, I got you. I got you. I got you. Oh, you okay? You okay? Good boy. I know you're getting older, buddy. I gotta be gentler with you. You're getting old, eh, buddy? You're getting old. You turned 11 this year. Did you know that? Did you know that? You turned 11? Yeah, most pugs only live to be like 14. Right? You're 11. So in dog years, that makes you 77. So I gotta be a lot more gentle with you. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. You're a good boy, though. Say hi to everybody. Say hello. What a good boy. What a good boy. What a good boy. Down you go, buddy. Down you go, buddy. Down you go. He's a good boy. All right. They want people to be smart enough to operate machines and dumb enough to not realize what's happening to them. That's exactly right. And you can see that in like what you have. I know I talk about this a lot, but I definitely bring it up all the time. Like what you have is you have economics departments where they're essentially teaching a religious ideology. Right? So it doesn't teach anything about economics in any kind of macro sort of sense. So any large-scale analysis of societies and economics is destroyed and replaced with a priesthood that is exclusively teaching a religious ideology. And then, because the capitalists know that they can't run businesses with this, they have a business school where they teach people about business, but that only teaches you so much. That takes you to like the CEO level, right? So then you're at the CEO level. And so nobody actually has an analysis of the culture, right? You're just taught to be a worker. And if you go above that, then you're taught to be a priest. It's pretty fucking crazy. Pretty fucking crazy. Who wants bad long COVID news? Oh boy! I posted a story on Discord. Lupus, rheumatoid arthritis. Oof. Seeing as we've got a fellow who comes in fairly regularly, who is... Oh, this is the other story. Oh yeah. Speaking of literacy, we were talking about that. Low literacy rates among U.S. adults could be costing the economy $2.2 trillion a year. No fucking shit. A new study by Gallup, on behalf of Barbara Bush, Foundation for Family Literacy, finds that lower level of adult literacy could be costing the U.S. as much as $2.2 trillion a year. According to the U.S. Department of Education, 54% of U.S. adults 16 to 74 years old, about 130 million people, lack proficiency in literacy, reading below the equivalent of a 6th grade level. It's a shocking number for several reasons, and its dollars and cents implications are enormous because literacy is correlated with several important outcomes such as personal income, employment levels, health, and overall economic growth. Commenting on the significance of the study, British A. Robinson, president and CEO of the Barbara Bush Foundation, said, "America's low literacy crisis is largely ignored, historically underfunded, and woefully under-researched, despite being one of the great solvable problems of our time. We're proud to enrich the collective knowledge base with the first of its kind study documenting literacy's key role in equity and economic mobility in families, communities, and our nation as a whole. The new research by Gallup attempts to estimate the gains in GDP that could result from improving adult literacy rates for the nation as a whole, as well as in the individual states and major metropolitan areas. Here's the basic methodology of the study, entitled Assessing the Economic Gains of Eradicating Illiteracy Nationally and Regionally in the United States, under the direction of lead author Dr. Jonathan Rothwell, Gallup's principal economist. Rothwell relied on international assessment of adult skills called the Program for the International Assessment of Adult Competencies that classifies literacy into several levels. The Department of Education used those results to create and publish estimated literacy levels for every U.S. country. Adults who scored below level 3 for literacy on the PIAC were defined as at least partially illiterate. Adults below or at level 1 may struggle to understand text beyond filling out basic forms, and they find it difficult to make inferences from written material. Adults at level 2 can read well enough to evaluate product reviews and perform other tasks requiring comparisons and simple inferences, but they're unlikely to correctly evaluate the reliability of texts or draw sophisticated inferences. Adults at level 3 and above were considered fully literate. They're able to evaluate sources as well as infer sophisticated meaning to complex ideas from written sources. To estimate national income gains, the study compared the incomes of people with different levels of literacy. Since literacies vary by age, race, gender, and other demographic characteristics, the study adjusted for these factors in order to better determine how income rises with literacy for individuals who are otherwise alike. That allowed it to estimate the average income gains that could be expected for an individual moving from below proficiency in literacy to minimal proficiency. A similar approach was used at the country and state levels, using newly created literacy estimates from the U.S. Department of Education and estimated income differences based on data from the Census Bureau. This study translates into dollars and cents that the literacy field is known for decades. Low literacy prevents millions of Americans from fully participating in our society and our economy as parent, workers, and citizens, said Robinson. It lies at the core of multi-generational cycles of poverty, poor health, and low educational attainment, contributing to the enormous equity gap that exists in our country. She continued, this research clearly shows that investing in adult literacy is absolutely critical to the strength of our nation, now and for generations to come. It proves that what Barbara Bush said more than 30 years ago is still true today. Literacy is everyone's business, period. The average minimal annual income of adults who are minimum proficient level for literacy, level 3, is nearly $63,000, significantly higher than the average of roughly $48,000 earned by adults who are just below the proficiency, and much higher than those at the lowest levels of literacy, who earn just over $34,000 on average. Because individuals with varying degrees of literacy, different in several ways, such as age, gender, urbanicity, race, ethnicity, and parental education, the authors controlled for those differences, and found that while the large income difference between people with different literary skills shrank, there were still quite large. The difference for people at low literacy level and those at level 3 was 23,979, and the gap between those at level 2 and level 3 was 13,000. And on it goes, right? Like, this is what you get for making fun of people who go get, like, theater degrees and shit. Sorry, man. Just yesterday I was talking about this, and so it's absolutely it's absolutely the case. Like, you want people to be literate. You want a literate populace. You want literate people, right? You think about, like, not only is that costing those people personally, it's costing the nation, right? It's costing your civilization. If you have a society of illiterate people, it means you can't get anything fucking done. It means you can't achieve anything. It means that you're constantly just ruddering up against this wall of superstition and conspiracy. And we're seeing it. We're seeing it right in front of our faces over and over and over again, right? And how do you make people literate? You make them read. You make them get that literature degree. You make them get that gender studies degree. You make them get that theater degree. You make them get that philosophy degree, right? Because it's useful even for the capitalists to have a literate populace. Oh, like, this is how bad it is in America, guys. 50% of America are illiterate. Functionally illiterate. That's terrible. Like, that's terrible. And these are the guys with the weapons. These are the guys with the bombs, guys. Like, these are the guys walking around with the biggest army. Right? And they can't even fucking read the manual. Like, they've got bombs that can wipe out cities. And they can't even read the manual for how to keep the bomb from exploding. Okay. COVID can be a trigger for colitis and Crohn's disease. Fuck. Just let it come through. Herd immunity. Let the strong survive. Might makes right. Might makes right. Getting sick from COVID is bad enough, but for many, it doesn't just end there. Millions will experience a long list of lingering symptoms like brain fog, fatigue, headaches, shortness of breath, neurological symptoms, and GI issues for weeks, months, and possibly years after the initial infection. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, new data from the Household Pulse survey showed that more than 40% of adults in the United States reported having COVID-19 in the past, and nearly 1 in 5 of those are currently still having some symptoms of long COVID. Eat this, not that. Health spoke with experts who explain how COVID affects the gut and signs you have long COVID. Raphael Kelman, a physician of integrative and functional medicine, tells us research is showing that the COVID vaccine can actually impact and adversely affect the microbiome, which then results in inflammation in intestine permeability and a host of consequences that occur when the gastrointestinal wall becomes more permeable than it should be due to toxins, environmental chemicals, and byproducts of bacterial metabolites that can then cause a number of problems in the body, including inflammation and even oral immunity. A component of the effects of coronavirus is its impact on the microbiome, and that's even if you don't have any gastrointestinal symptoms. So that's why improving the microbiome is a very important component in the healing of COVID. Also, dealing with vaccines and vaccine injury assists with prevention and the treatment of long-haul COVID. Jacob Tettelbaum, MD, integrative medicine physician, researcher, and best-selling author from Fatigued to Fantastic, adds, in some people, COVID likes to make a persistent home for itself in the gut lining, as the gut makes more brain and mood-controlling neurotransmitters than the brain itself. This can trigger the persistent brain fog and anxiety frequently seen in long haulers. Dr. Tettelbaum says it's not uncommon to see people come down with persistent diarrhea and sometimes nausea as part of their long COVID. Dr. Kelman adds, many people who had no gastrointestinal symptoms before they got COVID have developed gastrointestinal symptoms. There's no doubt about it. Certainly, if one has autoimmune gastrointestinal disease like colitis or Crohn's disease, they're more susceptible to exacerbation. People who have had no gastrointestinal disease, symptoms, or problems at all developed GI and COVID-related problems. They could persist for quite a while. Just brutal, dude. Just fucking brutal. Yeah, not to mention the Cuban healthcare yeah, absolutely. Like, wow, letting a virus sweep through your society was super good idea, eh? Super fucking good. No negative consequences. Like, definitely not going to be a drain on the overall productivity of the society. Definitely not bad for the building of a nation. Right? Definitely not bad for society building. Right? Definitely not bad to train your system, to train your social systems to just shrug and let diseases sweep through. Right? But definitely not a good idea to train the populace to act like fucking adults when a disease comes through the populace, right? Adam, you're putting me through my tests, man. You're putting me through it. You're like putting up multiple articles in the wrong place. Come on, dude. Come on, dude. I'm just fucking with you, dude. I don't care. Canadian study builds on link between long COVID and autoimmune diseases like lupus. Isn't that nice? Isn't that nice? Now we're going to get fucking lupus. Everybody get some lupus up in here. Manali Mukherjee, who led the study, is a respiratory researcher at McMaster University in Hamilton. Sorry, guys. Milo wants to play. Isn't that right, Milo? Okay, buddy. That's yours. Good boy. You did it. You beat me. I've been defeated in the field of honor, Milo. That's right. Let's see. What's this guy saying? Said 2 specific abnormal antibodies or autoantibodies which attack healthy tissues are known to cause autoimmune disease persisted in about 30% of patients a year after they became infected. The persistence of autoantibodies for a year or longer points to the need for patients to see a specialist who could test for signs of autoimmune disease. She said of conditions that also include type 1 diabetes and multiple sclerosis. If you are having long COVID symptoms even 12 months after getting COVID, please consider getting a rheumatological checkup just to make sure there's no trajectory towards systemic disease. Oh. Yeah, dude. Everybody get fucked. Everybody get fucked. Have a good one, Grinning. The research needs to hit some breakthrough because they're still trying to understand what the underlying cause is. Ugh. We're nearly 3 years in and we're still in the dark in a lot of ways. I mean, and what's so fucked up about it is that there's still people walking around just being like, COVID-19 was a hoax from the Chinese. It was a Chinese hoax. They want us to believe that COVID existed, but it didn't exist, and we all went into the lockdown. I tell you what, the lockdown was worse than the disease itself. I'm so sorry for posting incorrectly. Sorry to you, John. That so-called dog. Everyone, so-called dog. Everyone in the chat, everyone reading this in the future, and my wife and our 2 kids for standing by me. Milo, you're a dog. You're not a so-called dog. You're a dog, right? Although sometimes he does act like a little cat. It is true. He is actually like 98% gremlin, though. That's the real truth of it. Like, just listen to him, right? He is a bit of a gremlin. I love that this is turning into like Milo basically interrupting the chat with grumbles, right? You have been absolved for your sins. Okay, buddy. Okay. Everybody's listening to you. The world is hearing your grumbles. When the world should be listening to my grumbles, Milo. This is me grumbling. You have your own grumble time. You grumble on your own time, Milo. This is our grumble time. Consumers, especially seniors, say they can't keep up with natural gas prices as Enbridge seeks increase. We should nationalize our energy systems. We should nationalize and tell these fucking psychopaths to go and get real fucked. Get fucked. Like, get fucked. I don't know why we're negotiating with these people. Like, that's the thing that kills me about it. Like, why are we being like, hey, yeah, we should just let these loser psychos tell us the value of things, and certainly not just like actually allow people to have access to things at the value of what they're actually worth, right? I'm super glad that we attached parasites to the side of this thing that certainly aren't siphoning wealth away into offshore accounts. That's definitely not happening, right? And then when we point out that that's what they're doing, they certainly don't deal with us with total contempt. and sneer at us while they say we're just a bunch of fucking quarterbacks who don't know what we're talking about, right? That's certainly never going to happen, right? Nationalize these fuckers. Like, that's where I'm at, man. Like, I literally will not pay attention to a politician unless they stand up and say nationalize. Like, straight up. As far as I'm concerned, if you're not going to say nationalize, then I consider you to be part of the problem. And and I'm really genuinely not going to listen to what you have to say until you start talking about nationalization. Because, like, so many of the problems that we have is that we're actually negotiating with these psychopaths. We're actually going like, oh, okay, whatever you say, psycho. Like, whatever you say, Ted Bundy. Yep, Jeffrey Dahmer's got a point, you know. He worked real hard to kill those people, you know. And he's not apologizing for his success. And we shouldn't put a tax on success, you know. If those people didn't want to get murdered, they should have worked harder to not get murdered by Jeffrey Dahmer, right? That's literally the conversation that we're having right now. Like, we have handed the keys to the kingdom to utter psychopaths who are incapable of basic empathy, and compassion, and are literally doing everything they can to destroy the civilization and destroy the culture. And we're turning around and going, well, time to sit down at the negotiating table with them. No. They are incapable of governing the system. They are incapable of it. Get rid of them. Nationalize. It was a mistake to privatize. To say anything else at this point is to just be baby-brained. Literally, like, 50% of the society is illiterate, and it shows. Right? It was a massive, massive, massive mistake. A mistake on the level of degrading the national security, right? Like giving the nuclear codes to some other country. We would never do that. That's the level of the mistake that we're talking about here. It was a huge error. Huge. We should renationalize the fossil fuel industry. We should renationalize the energy sector. And we should treat anyone who stands up and says we should nationalize it like a Nazi. Just a dangerous, psychotic Nazi. And anything less than that, I'm just like, get the fuck away from me. Get the fuck away from me. I'm not interested in negotiating it. I'm not interested in hearing simping or somebody being like, oh, John, that seems a bit extreme, doesn't it? You know what's fucking extreme? Starving people. You know what's fucking extreme? Letting people freeze. That's extreme. And that's exactly what's going to happen. Watch what happens in the UK. That's coming for us. And how do I know? Because that's what they want. They don't give a fuck about us. They never gave a fuck about us. And this idea that if we privatize the system, it'll get run better because of whatever fucking dumbass reason they gave. Right? Competition breeds innovation. And we just bought it like a bunch of suckers. Right? Fucking get rid of these losers. Like, get rid of these losers. But the problem is that they took all of the money they pilfered from us, and now they've turned around and bought the system. They've bought the electoral system. And they're not going to allow us to renationalize the system using the quote-unquote democratic structure. So what have they left us with? I guess we've got to fucking surround the halls of power. It's the only thing left. It's just fucking ridiculous. Like, we nationalize everything, otherwise humanity will be baked. I mean, we need to restructure our economy into a war economy. Right? And we've just got to stop negotiating with these people. It's not a negotiation. The sun is not going to negotiate with us. Right? It's going to roast us. And we're just going to walk right into it. We're just walking into this meat grinder. And the people who own the fossil fuel industry, who own the energy sector, who own all this kind of stuff, will happily let it happen. They'll just run down into their bunkers, right? Or go off into their Jeffrey Epstein pedophile islands. That's who these people are. And we're just going to do it. Okay. oh, so, but competition breeds innovation. They keep talking. I can't wait to talk to the people in like 10 years who are still trying to simp with this competition breeds innovation, all of those talking points. I'm sure they'll be around, right? Just these absolute Nazis who are actually still trying to peddle this gaslighting grift on the populace. Like, it's just unbelievable to watch. We're just marching towards this apocalypse with the most banal, insipid, childish slogans as the defense being thrown against us. Yeah, 3,500 years ago, the Chinese knew that a leader needed a mandate from the masses. I mean, the Chinese understand how to build a civilization, right? And, like, especially right now, like the modern Chinese, like, it wasn't that long ago that they were experiencing something called 100 years of humiliation, right? Like, if you're experiencing 100 years of humiliation, right? And then you come out of that and you start building a civilization, you're not going to just, like, want to go back to it, you know? I don't see it would need to be a war economy. However, it definitely need to be an organized central economy and not a shit free market with no rhyme or reason to it. I call it a war economy so that people will understand how serious it is. Like, that's what it is. Like, I'm not trying to be particular with it. I'm not trying to be like, well, actually, like, I'm not interested, right? I say that we need to transition to something like a war economy so that people understand the scale of it. So that people understand what we're talking about, right? Like, I'm not interested in petty reformism. I'm not interested in treating the crisis strictly from a propaganda or rhetorical way. We need to act as though there is an invading army that is an existential threat to us. That is how we need to be acting. And we need to act that way and build a war-style economy in order to confront it. That's the reason why I say that. Like, technically, sure, you're right. Technically, I don't care. Like, you can stand there and push your glasses up and tip your fedora and rub your neck beard and be like, well, actually, all you want. Like, we need a war economy. That's what we need. Is this society racist? 14-year-old Laotian boy, escaped from Jeffrey Dahmer. A cop gave him back to Jeffrey against the boy's crying protest. Yep. This is like one of these famous stories at this point, right? Jeffrey Dahmer had kidnapped a 14-year-old Laotian boy, right? And the boy managed to escape. The cops got him and just delivered him back to Jeffrey Dahmer. Waka walk, waka walk. And the cop that did that became like a chief police, if I'm not a chief of police, if I'm not mistaken, right? It's just like normal society being normal. Ontario Premier Doug Ford's approval ratings dropped by 4 points since being elected. No shit. You mean, like, this is a phenomenon that I see happen all the time in Western civilization and Canadian culture, right? That everybody is pointing at a guy going like, this guy's a nightmare. He's going to privatize everything. He's a piece of shit. Like, these are the things he's going to do. We're telling you. And people go to the ballot box going, no, he's not. He's a good man. He's a good man. He's trying to do the best for us. And then they vote for him. And then a bunch of people go, and then he does the thing that he says he's going to do, right? And that we all were pointing at and being like, look, these are the things he's doing. Look. And then he starts to do those things. And then the people go, oh, you're doing the thing that they do. Like, bro, like, we know. And so it's happening to Ford after the election. It's just like buyer's remorse so many times. So many fucking times. I love that Poilievre's Conservatives in the leads while Liberals being squeezed by NDP. Here's your ballot, right? I love that it's like the report is that it's the Liberals that are being squeezed, but like the Conservatives are down too, right? So the NDP are up, and they're up, but the Liberals are only down 4.9, NDP are up 5.9. So some of that support's got to be coming from the Conservatives. Right? Right? Anyway. Honestly, I am actually glad to see this result. It does show me that the populace is at least in some ways potentially possible of acting in a way that may be construed as rational, right? I know, buddy. I know. I threw it. Go get it. I threw it, buddy. Go get it. Like this, the society by and large has just kind of shruggingly accepted that the parties are all going to be capitalist, right? And so if they're presented with these capitalist options, well, the only rational choice would be to choose the party that's actually going to make your life easier. And that's not the liberals, and that's definitely not the conservatives. And so what's left, right? What's left? So this result, hopefully this just keeps going up. Keeps going up. Just up and up and up and up and up and up and up. And the number one reason why I actually hope that it goes up, like, to me, the best case scenario for Canada at this moment in this time, right, and for the next election would simply be the Conservatives not winning again, right? So if it ends up being yet another Liberal minority government, that's actually fine by me, because I actually do think the Conservatives, this is it for them, right? That, and I've read more than one source that has said that if the Conservatives can't get government again, that the party is going to start breaking up, right? Like, and you saw that happen not that long ago with the Alberta Conservative Party, right? That they broke into two, right? And they went through a whole election. Remember, there was like the Wild Rose Party and there was the Conservatives, right? And that was the moment that Rachel Notley came up and became the premier for the one term. And then those two parties managed to re-merge with one another, right? And then won the next election. But the NDP knew all of this was true, so they kept Rachel Notley. And now it looks as though Rachel Notley and the NDP are just going to beat even the old Conservative coalition, right? So, like, if the Conservatives don't win another election, right? If the Conservatives don't win yet another election, it looks as though there's going to be a similar split that happens, and that's just good news for Canadians, right? Because, like, we don't want to see Conservatives in power. Like, I don't want to see Conservatives in power. No doubt. Although I will say, man, Pierre Poilievre, he's swinging with the rhetoric pretty hard. Like, every time I see a clip of him, he looks good, he sounds good. Like, if I didn't understand the underlying principles he was operating from, I could be pretty easily deceived into believing that he would be a good leader, right? I think it would be pretty easy to convince somebody who didn't understand what it was the Conservatives were actually about to think, like, yeah, that's right. Everything, I'm suffering right now, and housing prices are going bad, and this guy's sticking it to Trudeau, and we're going to stick it to Trudeau, right? I could see that. Seems completely reasonable to me. You know, especially if you have that mindset where it's like, well, you just need to work hard, and these liberals and NDP, they just want handouts. You know, we're all working hard here, you know? TMX is kind of nationalized? Fuck this kind of nationalized shit. No, fuck that. Fuck that. Oh yeah, this article. I wanted to bring this article forward because I think that this article articles like this are being pushed forward because the power structure is getting scared that people like me who are calling for nationalization are going to begin to gain traction. And so they're getting ahead of it. And what's the counter argument to nationalization? It's time for Canada to create competition policies, right? Competition policies that actually benefit customers. So it's an acknowledgement that there has been a monopolization right? And so the actual solution is nationalization, right? To get rid of this, or to accept that there's a monopolization, but that monopolization should be controlled by the people themselves, right? By turning these things into public utilities that you then vote for and the leadership of, right? And it's through the voting process that you actually control what happens in these institutions, instead of by quote unquote voting for your fucking dollar or whatever nonsense they use in their monopoly structures. And simply improving the quality of the service or making the service cheaper by simply getting rid of the parasites, right? That to me is probably one of the greatest grifts that has ever happened in the privatization argument. That they literally are saying to you that by putting a boil on the side of the system that does nothing except siphon value away, right? That will somehow make things cheaper or more or better. When the reality is that in order to pay for the boil, you have to raise prices or reduce service, just by definition. Oh, Watson, we skipped over that earlier. I forgot all about that, bud. Thanks for coming around. Thanks for coming back around on that, dude. I meant to talk about that. Let's talk about that instead of what I was going to talk about. Will Lehman, thanks so much, bud. UAW. Let's go. Now, when you say he crushed him, do you mean that he crushed him in the debate or he crushed him in the election? Okay, so there was a debate between Will Lehman and UAW President Ray Curry. The debate. The debate is organized in the court report. You leave me for a week, Watson, and I lose the thread. Look how easy that is. I love this. Lehman explained what's at stake. I'm eager to have the chance to present my program to the working class. We must break up the UAW apparatus and give power to the rank-and-file workers on the shop floor. This debate is a historic event. For the first time, a rank-and-file worker will be able to tell the UAW bureaucracy what we think of them. Been busy on a rank-and-file committee at my workplace. Amazing, Watson. Amazing, dude. Thanks so much for bringing this to us. Like, straight up. Like, this is one of these stories that I feel like is slipping through my cracks. Because this story, like, it's completely possible that something like this kicks off into something much, much bigger. And it's good to see that there is actually a fight happening where someone might actually win. When is this? When is the vote? When is the vote? And Watson, what do you think? How do you think it's going? Like, what do you think is going to be the outcome? Like, do you think Will Lehman actually has a shot at this? Is where I'm driving. Yeah, the UAW not promoting this debate at all. It doesn't want workers to know it is even happening. It isn't surprising, considering the bureaucracy opposed the idea of direct elections in the first place. The only reason this debate is even happening is because the UAW leadership was convicted of robbing workers of our dues money and selling us out to the company. I have received messages of support from workers across the country heading into the debate, urging me to confront the bureaucracy about the conditions we workers face, both in auto as well as healthcare, education, and other sectors. Even though I was not given time off to prepare for the debate, I had to use one of my few personal days to attend the debate itself. I feel confident because I know I have the support of the rank and file. All he had in response to his statements was his inexperience and the defense of the bureaucracy as being anti-divisive. What fucking horseshit, eh? Yeah, because, like, we definitely want experienced criminals. We definitely want people who are experienced in fleecing the working class in power, right? And a defense of the bureaucracy as being anti-divisive, because we definitely want a compliant bureaucracy, right? That's definitely what we want. Like literally, it sounds to me like the responses were, we're cooperating with the destruction of the working class, right? We have a whole bunch of experience in destroying the working class. We're well experienced at complying with the capitalists and destroying the working class. Here, vote for us. Like, I don't understand why anybody would ever continue voting, right? I suspect he'll lose, but this is going to open up a serious debate about the will of the working class within the AFL, CIO, CLC, and the pro-business bureaucrats that run it. Like, I mean, to me, this is sort of the bottom line, Watson. Like, I mean, if the working class cannot push through the electoral system and gain power within the rule set itself, then, like, it's very difficult for someone like me to get very excited about it, you know? Like, how bad is it going to have to get before the working class, before working class voters, before people in unions actually begin voting against the systems that are obviously betraying them? Like, these systems are obviously betraying people. I can't tell you how many times I'm reading stories now about how, like, here in Ontario, the teachers. I'm reading articles that are literally, like, teachers are screaming at the bureaucracy for the teachers. And it's obvious to anyone that the bureaucracy that exists is completely compliant to a capitalist system that's abandoning them. Like, it's so obvious that the bureaucracy basically just turns around to whoever's in power at the time and goes, okay, yes, sir. And that's it. There's no negotiation that's happening. There's no debate that's happening. There's no pushback. They're not fighting against the power structure, which is the whole idea of a union, is to fight back against the bosses, right? To fight back against the ownership class. They're just complying with it. And at what point do the workers start to actually say, fuck that, fuck this, fuck these losers, I'm never voting for these people, I don't see any reason to vote for these people, let's vote for this guy, I don't care if he's inexperienced, I don't give a shit about any of that, I'm voting for him because he's inexperienced, I don't give a fuck about these people, I want somebody to go up there and punch people in the ass, right? And just punch people in the ass. I want someone to go up there and smash the place up. I want somebody to go up there and do that. And when is that going to start happening? Is it going to start happening? And why isn't it happening? Like, that's the question I really want to know. Why isn't it happening? Because, for fuck's sake, like, is it just because people are so fucking scared that they're looking around at a society that's in collapse and abandonment, and they're thinking to themselves, at least I have this, and I'm not going to upset this because at least I have this? Because that, to me, is the only thing that seems to make any sense. That people are looking around and be like, okay, you know what, I got a good job, it's got benefits, it's a union job, right? I don't need to, okay, not going to rock the boat, not going to rock the boat, right? That's what Trump did. Maybe that's why normal people won't do that. Yeah, but I mean, like, to me, that's so crazy, right? Like, so it's like, so people are willing to put a maverick in if it's the guy with the nukes. But if it's a guy that might be able to actually fight and get you a better raise, they're not going to do it. It's wild, man. Like, it's just wild what's happening. He's going to go in there and drain the swamp. Yeah, he's going to go in there and drain the swamp. We're going to give that guy the nuclear codes for sure. But this guy who might give me a raise, no. No. The total of the article is, with Ontario planning to ban education strikes, workers demand to know how Unhooks plans to respond. Yeah, dude, I cannot believe that Ford thinks he's going to get away with that. Like, it's like he's pushing forward an education strike ban. Like, I would be demanding a strike based on that alone. Like, that's a basic right. Like, that's basic. And if you're going to ban people from striking, I think people should go on strikes exclusively for that reason. For no other reason. Like, and to me, it's crazy that Ford's trying to do it. And it's pretty shocking. It's pretty shocking to see a union that is not pushing back, right? Like, I don't know how people who are part of the union aren't in full scale revolution about it. Like, are we this gulled? Like, are we just this compliant? Have we gotten to this point where we're just so willing to just bow our heads and shrug and that's the end of it? Looks like we're just gonna quietly march into the decline. It looks like just not gonna bother pushing back. Seems to be what's happening. Yeah, it's not shocking if one understands the class issues between the bureaucracy and the rank and file. I mean, it seems pretty clear that the bureaucracy has been corrupted, right? That the bureaucracy realizes that they've got a cushy position and that they just need to comply with the capitalists, and they can just maintain this kind of cushy status that they have, right? Where they don't really have to do any work and they don't really have to do anything. All they really have to do is just bob their stupid empty head along and go like, yeah, okay, absolutely, yeah, whatever you say, right? Then they get a 6-figure salary for doing basically fuck all, you know, just answer some emails every so often, I suppose. And like, it just seems to me like, what a fucking cushy job, right? Being the head of a union that you don't need to actually do any fighting over. Your job is basically just like writing an email, making a speech every so often. Wow. like what a cushy ass job, and you get paid like a 6-figure salary for that. Meanwhile, the people who are actually doing the work on the floor, right? The people who are actually going out and actually getting their hands dirty and actually providing a service and actually doing something, right? That who get paid like $50,000 a year, maybe $60,000 a year, right? All you got to do is every so often they'll grumble at you and you go, yeah, we're working on it. Right? And that seems to work. What a great fucking position, man. What a great job. Just basically just bullshit people all day. Your job is to contain any worker militancy and maintain the profit motive for the business they represent to the workers they claim to defend. Yeah. Right? Like, what a stress-free job. Like literally you're just whistling to work every day. You know? Like, it just seems like talk about and these are the types of people who call us lazy, right? Like, I just don't get why we're taking these people seriously. Like, they yeah, I'm dealing with this with the USW right now. Yeah, go get it, buddy. No, I think every union is dealing with this right now, right? Because if the union wasn't dealing with this right now, there'd be something more significant happening, right? Like, the society is eating itself alive, right? The society is eating itself alive, and it's obvious to anyone. Like, this is it, and it's getting more and more obvious by the day. It's getting so obvious that even the conservatives have started to actually talk about it in the caucus. Right, Pierre Poilievre's whole shtick, his whole push, is to acknowledge that things have gotten fucked up, right? And like, so you're talking about like the capitalists are essentially fielding a candidate that is saying, "Holy shit, everything's gone fucking wrong, everything's tits up," right? And they're doing it because they know it's effective and they know it's going to work, right? But we all know that it's a grift coming out of the conservatives. Like, we all know it's a fucking grift. We know they're not serious. We know that they're just doing it so that they'll get the votes and then destroy the system. If you look at the recent contract ramifications negotiated by the WSW or USW, they all come in 5% wage increases a year over a 4 to 5 year length. Inflation is 8.5. Yep, that's a 3.5% pay cut. You got it. Right? And it just looks to me like all the unions are going, oh, yeah, okay. Oh, no, normal society, normal. Like, can you imagine? Well, you don't even need to imagine, Watson. right? You don't even need to imagine. But to everybody else listening who's not part of a union, like, imagine you're joining a union, right? You're getting into a union job because you've been told that's safer. You've been told that's all that kind of stuff. You pay your union dues, right? You go to elections, you vote for people, and the result that you get is this bullshit. Like, how are you not in full-scale revolution? Like, how are you guys not just shutting down the factory floor? Fuck the union. Like, fuck these bosses. You should be in full-scale, overt revolt against these guys. You should simply not be producing anything for them. You should put your hands in your pockets and look at these union bosses and say, go get fucked completely. And when they talk, you should spit on the floor and sneer at them. You should take your tools and throw it at their windows. Like, fuck these people. Fuck these absolute parasitical losers. And anyone who votes for them. Like, who's voting for these people? Who's looking at these people being like, that's right, I can't wait to experience a pay cut. I can't wait for things to get dangerous and worse, and boy howdy, I can't wait for my workplace to become a real shithole. I'm super looking forward to working in less conditions. Like, yeah, plant closures, job losses, and flag waving are powerful counter-narrative. Yep, because we're dealing with psychos, right? We're just dealing with straight-out psychos. And it's the same argument I have for, like, why are people voting conservative? Right? Like, why are people voting to destroy the civil society? Like, it really does touch down on, like, the deepest questions that I have about our culture. Why are we destroying ourselves? Why are we destroying ourselves? Because even if you are, like, a direct beneficiary, like, even if you're somebody who thinks, like, I'm voting conservative because they're going to lower my taxes, and I'm going to have... But your society is definitely degrading over it, right? It's definitely a negative outcome. Definitely. Fear is a serious motivator. That's definitely the truth. It's definitely the truth. Fear, I would argue, is the serious motivator, right? Because it hits you right down at the core, right down at the lowest level, destabilizing someone's living. Right? And so I think you got it, right? That people are voting the way that they're voting because they're just like, I got this and I'm just going to keep it this way and that's fine. Right? And I don't want to be destabilized. What's up, buddy? What's up? And it just looks to me, I've said it again and again. The system of capital is unable to respond rationally to crises. It's unable to respond rationally to these crises. And I actually think has begun to see that it can make money by generating crises. That the old ethos of the capitalists was, don't let a good crisis go to waste, so that when a crisis occurred, you can exploit it for profit. Well, now they're seeing that, oh, if we can exploit crises for profit, then we should create crises to profit from. That we are entering crisis capitalism, where the destruction, just find a way to profit from the destruction of the culture itself. Find a way to profit from the destruction of the civilization and the destruction of humanity itself. And then do that. If the capitalists could find a way to profit from murdering people directly, like literally shooting them in the streets Nazi style, they will. They will. Oh my goodness. All right, guys. I'm heading into the work week. I have a date on Saturday. I'm very excited about that. I'm very excited about that. So something worth looking forward to for me. I hope you all have a good weekend. I hope you all recover from this capitalist nightmare a little bit. I hope you're not all in free fall. Watson, I'll never tell. I'm a gentleman, after all, sir. Always remember, guys, you are a quantum being, walking around in quantum energy. These billionaires are spending hundreds of millions of dollars to make sure you'll never realize it. You'll just stay the good little commodity they need you to be. Revolt. Rebel. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.